Good evening. It's Monday, October 16th, and this is a meeting of the Southborough Planning Board. The Planning Board is now in session. The first item on the agenda is MBTA Communities, scheduling the mapping workshops. Colleen, do you want to take it from here?
I'm just going to sit out here just because I have several things.
Turn the microphone on.
So the scheduling of them, we quickly went over how long it might take, so we're thinking an hour to 2 hours. All righty. Can I show you what we'll be doing first? So the mapping exercise is basically going to be a map like this at each table, and we're thinking about eight tables. There is room, I did check, there's room and availability at the senior center for any Saturday and not Thursday evenings. So you're pretty wide open with what we can schedule. And we'll open up all 3 rooms. All righty, so the mapping thing, we'll have a map like this that has the green space, all the water bodies, and the orange is privately owned. All the restricted land is sort of shown right here. So we have a copy of this we can print, and we'll have one at each table. The actual map isn't to scale, so we found 5 parcels that equaled 1 acre each. So these are 5-acre stickies. And the attendees will be instructed to sort of put them where they think it should go, the overlay zoning. We need 10 down in this area. Oh, my sticky's not working sticky anymore. There you go. And just see where everybody is, and then we'll get together afterwards and discuss the different areas and why they chose them, and maybe there'll be some intelligence we'll get out of the whole thing. Is there any more that anybody wants to add to this?
Well, just to give you an idea, Lexington did this, and these are the examples of the 10 tables that they had, and what was done at their mapping sessions.
There's a set of instructions there, too, that they'll be given. Did you get to look at those, Debbie?
So each sticky is equal to 5 acres, so each table will need to place 10.
Yes.
And so I think this is a question just as to how to organize. If we should kind of, what would be, I think would be helpful is is there a sign-up process? Or could we do a sign-up process, or is it just show up? Because, I think that if we get the entire group of people that live in certain areas together to kind of come to with each table, or pre-assign or something like that, or designate if there's a way to do that. I just don't know who we're expecting, but to get people to collaborate a little bit on a combination. So each person has to put in 2 yellow stickies in the yellow half-mile radius, and then the remaining 3 somewhere else in the town of Southborough. Is that right?
Yeah, that sounds, yeah.
Right. Wait, 1 is equal to 5. The 10, so they have to do 10 stickies. 2 and 8.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
And then, again, on the instruction sheet, it does say that 25 acres must be contiguous. So it's not a 5-acre, 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 5-acre. 25 contiguous, and then the 10 need to be by the station, and that leaves us 5.
Okay, perfect.
There's 10 acres at the station, and then 25 have to be contiguous. So that's 35, unless the contiguous portion, the 25, is contiguous to the train station area.
I don't see that.
Then that
I
might
don't see
be
that
a
happening
little
either.
I don't think that's going to be a problem.
So then 35, so then 15 acres somewhere else.
And those 15 don't have to be contiguous. They can be 5 everywhere else.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, thanks. I think it's an excellent exercise.
And so Marnie, what you were recommending is that if we get a group just open attendees, they could all be from one sector of the town. And then you'll get a biased feedback. So if we ask people to sign up, we may have a better sense of it, but you can't control that you get different parts of the town attending.
Right, or we could just do it differently as people walk in, like if we have 8 tables, then we label each table and we just give out your table 1, your table 2, and so that we make sure that it's evenly distributed across, and it could still be biased just based on who walks in at what time, but at least then it's somewhat a little bit more random as to who's coming in.
And I think that's what they did in Lexington. They assigned numbers, table numbers to people when they
Yeah.
walked in.
Yeah, and honestly, we can advertise it through the email list that I have and through, say, a news flash and something on the website as bring a neighbor,
Yep.
work with a neighbor, kind of make that suggestion out there.
Colleen, how big is your list of interested people?
Just from the forum alone, I have probably 35 names. Some are couples, but
So the person that is at the table, are they also taking notes to try to understand, like, why did you pick this part of the street instead of that part of the street?
I mean, that'll be part of, I think, the discussion afterwards. Have people sort of explain how they chose and why. And then maybe, within their groups, they'll probably be discussing it while they're placing them, since it's a group effort.
To that point, I think it's a great idea that we actually provide a template where they have to fill out, like, why they've selected the areas.
Okay.
And I think that's a good point, because people will forget when it comes time to present, or they don't want to present, so at least we'll capture their feedback, and then we can all float along, who's ever attending, can float along to each table and help them along.
Like a notes sheet on each
Yeah.
table where.
Or sort of a template where we're providing, where did you put why did you put the 10 acres next to, where you did at the railroad?
Where, why?
Where did you chose the 25, not where, but why did you choose this? Why did you select this? And where did you place your remaining 3 stickies? Not leading, but just, they have to put the 10, right? So why did you choose it? So it's really just asking very open questions. But that's easy enough to create in a Word document. I can do that.
And I'll go back and view the video and find out if there was any special kind of instructions that they gave verbally that weren't written anywhere that might have helped people along, how they picked or something.
I know that at workshops I've attended, like at Mass Housing, MHP, where they have their annual meeting, and they do little work groups like that. They break the crowd up into 15 groups, and it's maybe 4 people, and you collaborate in that little mini group, and then the host says, okay, table number 1, what did you do? And they did have some kind of little guidance sheet, and then each table picks a speaker who is more comfortable, and then they speak for the group,
Yeah.
kind of thing. So I thought that worked, it does work well, I think, at least from what they were doing with us then.
So the results of this process that's going to come back to this board, and then we could make adjustments from there before the public hearings for the warrant article. Thanks.
And I think from there, depending on where we decide the overlays are going to go, we'll write the bylaw or bylaws, depending on whether we want different regulations in different areas.
So I had one other,
Colleen, just real quick before.
Yeah.
Can you do that? I'm just not sure. You're allowed to have different criteria for different pieces of, okay.
yeah, you could have 5 different, well, not 5 different districts, I suppose a few different districts. You could have one that was just multifamily overlay.
Right.
You have one that's multifamily with bottom floor.
So you could
Commercial.
anticipate having several sections added as districts, as overlay districts. Okay, kind of under the MBTA heading, yeah. Okay, just making sure.
So, and the only other thing that I had that I thought might come in useful, and this was actually a affordable housing exercise, is something with the Legos, because it shows spatially kind of how it's going to look. So without having done all the numbers on this, this could be each one of these is 100 square feet, kind of how I figured it out. So this is a 2,600 square foot ranch with its parking. This one would be parking underneath with the yellow being commercial. Oh, I'm sorry. You can actually see this? All right. So white being residential, yellow being commercial. This was just in case we had a commercial requirement to it. And then above is more residential, multifamily, and kind of figuring out the parking. So there is parking underneath, but to meet the parking requirement for this, we would still need parking elsewhere. So we would have some parking out here, just to kind of spatially, like, would you rather have all of the parking under and have it be taller? Or would you rather have no parking under, spread out the footprint. It's just a visual that I thought might help if it comes into need, and I'll have better numbers, exactly, this is a 2,000 square foot house. And this is, my Legos I couldn't find. Have you ever tried to buy Legos? They come in nothing but kits now. So, anyway, but something I'll write up on this. We'll have it there in case we need it. I don't know if anybody's going to be confused on that sort of a thing.
Just to be clear, would that be the host, or you are having the example ready? Is it going to be something that each table has a little palette and they can build something? Or is it more for demonstration for the host at the work?
I was planning on having a demonstration
Yeah.
and just kind of having some things laid out saying this is, a single-family home on 1 acre. And here is, a two-family house on a half an acre. And this is what it looks like, 15 units on 1 acre.
Yeah.
And then you can do it different ways.
So like a one
almost something
block-
you can play with.
One block might represent a certain number of units. So you'd have 15 white blocks, and you'd have to put them on that green plate palette to show if you want 15 units spread
On an
out on
acre.
one story,
Right.
and you have very little green left, or you have 15 white blocks piled up and you have a 15-story
Exactly.
building, but you have a whole bunch of green space left around there. And then so
Exactly.
you could see the
And
relationship.
I just thought if we were to decide to do a commercial requirement, which I hear EDC is kind of looking at, that this might be everybody wants their piece in this little zoning
Have they met and
exercise.
discussed this at all? EDC?
Pardon?
Have they met and discussed this at all?
I believe they have. I haven't seen Leah this week. She comes in Tuesday through Thursday. But yeah, they definitely have an interest if it's going to help them along Route 9.
So you mentioned a commercial requirement. Would a better way to phrase that, or a possible way to phrase that, be a commercial allowance? I mean, why would we require commercial? I'm lost on that a little bit.
Say a downtown district, a lot of the planning norms these days have the storefronts on the bottom, and they have residential above. So,
Well, I know that's allowed, but it certainly isn't required.
no, but we could require it along an underutilized section on Route 9. If there was an old building that, like the old, where the car condos were going. What an ugly piece of land that was, If you could take something like that and require a commercial bottom, apartments above, it would help revitalize that area. But again, that's up to the board, all the input we get from the public. It may not be something that this town wants to do.
I think the thought being on someplace like Route 9, we have such limited commercial zones in this town that you wouldn't want to lose the ability for commercial on Route 9, so you'd require like a
Right.
mixed use.
The only thing, I'm just thinking that some developers, under certain circumstances, might determine that the highest and best use is purely residential. In which case, a requirement that there be commercial building doesn't seem, I don't know, I don't see how that makes sense or helps.
Well, to the, and I'm not speaking for them, but as an economic development, I've been involved in the past, it's a wonderful way to bring commercial base into your community and still have your residential units being taken care of. You know, if you require them, the storefronts, it could be a gym, maybe a public gym underneath. You know, there's a million different things you could do, but it helps the taxpayers. It takes the burden off the residents when you have the more bigger commercial base, obviously.
Right.
Something that Southborough needs.
Right. I mean, or what could happen is we might compel a developer to build a commercial unit that just is vacant. And that could happen,
Yeah,
unfortunately. So I'm just, you know, my support would probably be behind allowance for a commercial rather than something that compels a developer to build a commercial unit
that could,
structure.
yeah, we'll have to go back through the, however you write it, as long as we zone it, we can require this, or I think we can allow it. I think either way would be okay. It's a good point, though. Thanks. Any other comments?
So I know we discussed this lot coverage
Yeah.
during the downtown when there was a push to change from the FAR that we have in all of the zoning to lot coverage. So I think that's useful to understand, but I don't know if that goes with the mapping particularly.
Okay.
Just my opinion, I don't
Yeah.
know what the
So
rest of the board
the
thinks.
purpose of this is to show the proportions, right? I think it's pretty useful, personally. Is that green square supposed to be an acre?
This is the part, so there's 32 by 32, and each one of these is, in the instructions I had, was 100 square feet, which makes it easy with the bricks to kind of figure out, so this is 8 little dots, so it's 800 square feet. So 2 of these, I figure, is your average house. You could do it up and down, you could do it side by side, and then commercial here, they're a little bit different shaped. But just the different colors, so you can kind of see where the commercial, I have long skinny ones, so you could do it a little bit different than, say, a residential unit. But yeah, as a visual, I think it's great.
Yeah.
You know, and we can have them I'll have them kind of built up as the visual. This is, you know, the 4 stories everybody's afraid of. This is what it looks like 1 story down with the parking outside, things like that. That's what I'm hoping it'll visualize for people.
Or maybe, like, split that one thing into 4 sections so you
Exactly.
can see, yeah.
This was my little residential. I was trying to put something together real quick because I just got these at 5 o'clock. So I'm like, quick, how can I do this? Yeah, so there's some parking, and yeah, we'll definitely do something like that.
I agree. I think the Legals is a good use of visualization. I also heard when we did the forum, I didn't attend the second one, but the first one, people wanted to see the 15 units per acre. And I know we didn't have any of those examples. So I don't know if we have, so one, that's helpful, but 2, if there's another way. I was clicking through something. Was it the Lexington examples? They had a bunch of ones. They brought it into like Waltham Corner, like you saw a bunch of different representations. But I think if there's, maybe it's our PowerPoint slide where you've already done that, Colleen, and you've shown that. I think having some of those available for people to flip through,
Oh, sure.
just to see again. And then if there is a 15 unit per acre example or examples that we could find on the net, I think it would just help people.
Yeah, I think visuals are just definitely helpful in my mind.
I had a question about accessory dwelling by right. As part of the housing choice law, I think that you're able to have one or maybe more of the districts have accessory apartments by right, if, as long as you don't change the wording in the law. And do we have to worry about that now? Or do we think maybe as planning board, we want to take a position on whether we would have one or more districts? Or all the districts? I can't recall really. I have to go back and take a look at the law, what we're able to have.
So I think that that's different than 3A.
It's in 3A.
There is a
It's
piece
in
of it that's
3A.
in 3A.
It is, well, for the town meeting vote, correct?
Yes, I guess my question is, do we have to identify the district that we would want to have it? So it's different because we have a different situation in town, right? We have a bylaw about accessory apartments, and that's something that is being looked at separately. But under the housing choice law, we can choose a district or more than one district that has accessory dwelling by right. And I don't know whether we have to, at some point, choose which district that is, or do they all have it?
Well, number one, I would think it would definitely be a residential district, because
would
you're not
be
going to
a-
put an accessory apartment on anything but a
Right.
residential unit.
Yes.
And honestly, I think, just adding it to your RA and your RB is not a heavy lifting thing. You could just,
So are you saying you want to add this to the MBTA communities?
So it's part of the MBTA Communities Act.
it would
It's
be a
already
simple
in there.
majority vote, is
Okay.
what, I guess,
Yeah.
the correlation you're making?
Yeah, if you go changing it, from what I understand, and also from town council, and I think select board have mentioned it as well, if you change anything, you need a two-thirds majority vote. But if you leave it as written, as the law was written, then it already has a built-in section that's a part, accessory dwellings by right. But I think you have to choose which district, or maybe I just don't understand it, maybe
Well,
it
wouldn't it be
applies
in the
to-
whole, in anything?
I don't know. Maybe. If that's the
Right.
case, then there's nothing for us to do. I guess that is my question.
Yeah, technically, you wouldn't put an accessory dwelling on a duplex or a triplex. It's really meant as a secondary use
For a
to
single
the
family.
primary, single family.
Right.
And that's what they're promoting, because it does help families. I'm not sure, you could certainly add it as a by right, something to your,
Well, I think to Deb's point, let's say somebody bought a lot in the MBTA Communities District, and instead of building, true multifamily housing, they just build a new single family with an ADU. Or they buy a single family and now they're like, hey, great, I'm in the MBTA zone.
Rent. I'll rent out my space.
That's actually becoming more commonplace now that an ADU is, recognized as, it's okay to rent it.
Yeah.
It's not the way we do it now, but
now, and other towns I know, they put deed restrictions that they have to be a family member, and that's been
most
widened.
towns do right
It's-
now.
But it's been widened enough to allow for au pairs and nannies, things like that, where it's not necessarily a family member,
Right.
but somebody that's a part of the family unit.
But I think Deb is onto something where it doesn't, we don't necessarily have to have large multifamily, high-density housing built in the MBTA, and, it's
Yeah.
not required.
No,
Somebody could just add an ADU to an existing single family by right, and I think that would be advantageous. So we just kind of want to make sure when we're doing our review of the
so you want to talk
language
about
of the,
accessory dwelling units by right for single-family units in the MBTA. I don't see why we couldn't do that.
seems,
Let's-
yeah.
We can look
Well,
into it a little
Yeah,
deeper.
I just don't know if we have to do anything. Maybe we really don't have to do
When
it.
we're actually reading it for our public hearings, we just have to make sure it's in there.
So-
This is a first for me,
It's
so
a
I don't know
very
how
small
this is
part
gonna
of that
happen,
law.
but
Yeah.
normally we read the bylaw and go over it with a fine tooth comb, piece by piece, and then it goes to town meeting. And so it'll be in there, I hope, I would think.
So I don't see that in MBTA communities.
I'll send it to you.
Okay.
So
So that would be on top of so we have to have an allowance for 15 units per acre, and this would be, in addition to that, would be to allow ADUs by right?
I don't know if it's in addition. I
I will
looked
look
into it as
into it
much
tomorrow.
as it was sort of intersecting with something, as you know, I'm working on with Andrew Dennington from Select Board and Doris Cahill from
Which was
ZBA.
ADUs by right.
Right, and so one of my questions to the two of them was, well, with MBTA communities coming into town and hopefully would be voted on, is it something that we still would want to do? And so we took a look at the law and just agreed that that's just separate from what that group is looking to do.
Well, so if you were to do it by right, just for your residential areas, it still would have a lower threshold. It doesn't have to be part of the 3A to have the lower threshold. The lower threshold is meant to promote units, the building of units.
Yeah.
So I know I've seen it that way. How you write it into it, I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to look into it a little deeper.
I'll have to look into it too. I had looked into it a while ago, and if I'm incorrect, I'll correct myself, but I'll send along the information that I sent to Mr. Dennington.
But the by right one is simple majority,
Yeah.
even if it sits alone.
So, but that would mean that if the town is voting, the warrant article would be stipulating where these areas are,
Not
right?
necessarily. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be part of 3A. They're suggesting people to allow them by right,
Yeah,
ADUs by right.
right.
And that, if it was a standalone warrant article, nothing to do with MBTA communities, it would still be a lower threshold of a vote. They're trying to make it easier for that.
But are you saying that this ADU is part of the MBTA guideline that says you can put, no, right? You're just saying the vote is different.
I think it's been, since everything has been, it's been brought up. I don't know that,
As part of the housing choice, I think it just was listed as one of the features that you need only a simple majority
Yeah.
maybe that's how it was read.
versus a special permit. Like, right now, accessory dwelling unit requires a special permit
Right.
from the ZBA with a report from the planning board.
Right.
And that's a 4 out of 5 person vote, not 3.
Well, it's a simple majority at town meeting to pass
Oh, yeah,
instead
that's
of
right.
two-thirds.
Yes.
Right, right.
So does that mean we would need to write that into our bylaw if we want it?
No, it's just, so I think I know where we're getting confused. You can put it in this, but what it was, I think what you were reading was just saying that these kinds of actions now have a lower voting threshold. Normal zoning is supermajority. And every time you change zoning, whether it's new or you're
Permit.
changing it or
Yeah.
whatever, it's a supermajority. So they've lowered the threshold for new dwelling units, really,
In the state law.
in the
So
state
you
law.
just
Yeah.
referenced the state law, like that, I mean, that's, I don't know if you have to necessarily reiterate it in your local code.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you would have to, because that's where the vote is.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, I'm still a little confused on that, so I'll have to read it, because I think it only means in the districts that we're voting to be considered MBTA community, like where our districts are going to be located.
I think that they're separate. I don't think that that's.
Okay. Okay, I'll do some reading on it. That it's good if we don't have to do anything, so thank you.
I just pulled up the revision of the 3A, the most recent one, and just literally did a find for accessory or accessory dwelling unit. There's nothing in here specific to those words. So unless it's designated some other words, it's not in this 3A compliance guidelines.
Okay.
No, I think it stemmed from the housing choice bill and the language in there where it broke up various things of, you know, what else can you count towards MBTA? So if you had an existing downtown village that met certain criteria, you'd already basically have a zone. And then they had other things like if you want accessory dwelling units, the vote is now this, because they just want to make it easier to pass.
Yeah, Chelmsford used one.
Increase
It was
housing.
a project-based rezoning of one parcel, and that was a simple majority, and it wasn't considered spot zoning because of the housing choice. So it was changed the zoning for a project-based. It was a mix of affordable and regular units, and so that went through with a simple majority. It would not have passed town meeting at a supermajority. Oh, yeah.
Hey, Lisa, sorry, I forgot about you. Do you have anything to add to this conversation?
Thanks, Mimi. I think everybody covered the questions that I had. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Thank you. Thanks, Vice.
So do we want to schedule these is the big thing? Let's get
Yeah.
them scheduled and start working on. Have we decided as a board that you definitely want to do a Saturday?
Looking at that, I just want to also point out that Colleen was notified by
Bowler.
the 3A technical assistance folks and by Bowler Engineering that they've been authorized to give additional assistance.
Yeah, they're
to
going to
help
redo our maps and help us with the bylaw.
with mapping and bylaw. And then also I saw an email this morning through the Mass Planners Forum about there's additional 3A grant money for technical help to do anything.
Yeah, they're
do
basically,
anything. Even outreach.
anything you need, we'll give you.
Yeah, so if we have the opportunity, we could always try and get some of that too.
Yeah, we'll take all the help we can get.
We were looking at November. Is that when we were looking at? So we can, or,
Was it
Here's the.
last week in October? In November?
that 27th, 4th? No, the 30th. The 30th and the 6th? Last week of October, first week of November?
The 30th is a Monday, isn't
Yeah, the week of the 30th, October 30th.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Do you want to do them in the same week? Is that what you're saying?
No, I think we should do them in 2 separate weeks, and that we thought maybe a Saturday would be helpful, but
Mimi, can I offer a suggestion on Saturdays?
Sure.
So my only concern on a Saturday is most of the school-age parents are back into full-blown fall sports. I don't know when they end, and I would just be afraid that we might miss a group. I mean, maybe do one Saturday and then one day, excuse me, during the week to be able to make sure we accommodate everybody versus doing just a Saturday for both.
yeah, oh yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah, I think that was the intention.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lisa.
Sorry, I misunderstood.
So we can't do the 31st.
You think?
So maybe a Thursday and Wednesday, like the last set, if you did the 2nd and the 8th?
Do we think a Saturday would be advantageous, would pick up a different demographic than during the week?
That's fair.
I think potentially.
Are you anticipating about 2 hours?
Hour and a half.
I think an hour and a
Yeah,
half
I think
makes
an hour and a
sense.
half will do it. I think that Lexington was 2 hours, but they did that long presentation. Like, they did our whole informational session first and then the maps.
And the planner advised us not to do that.
Yeah.
So,
So I have a conflict on the Thursday, the 2nd,
Okay.
that evening. We could do that Saturday day or Wednesday night. Is 2 nights out hard for people if they do Halloween on 31st and then Wednesday the next night, the 1st?
So Wednesday, the 8th?
And
I'm
the
Oh, you're
7th
saying
is
Wednesday the
election day,
First,
remember?
yeah.
Yeah, the 7th is election day,
Okay.
election Tuesday.
Unfortunately, that following week, I'm conflicted the 8th, 9th, and 10th with work events, and we have planning board on the 6th. So maybe we go the following week.
Yeah, the 8th works better for me personally, if we're doing a Wednesday.
Wednesday, Thursdays aren't good at the senior center.
They're not good.
No.
Oh, it's both Wednesdays and Thursdays. I thought you said no
Oh,
Thursdays.
No,
Wednesdays.
just Thursdays are bad.
Thursday, okay.
Thursdays. They
So
have
Wednesdays
a
are
group.
good.
Wednesdays are good.
Okay.
What about Wednesday, the 8th?
They're wide open on their other days,
I'm conflicted.
You're conflicted.
Yep.
on the
How
8th.
about try the next week? The
So
week of the
Wednesday, the
13th.
15th.
Well, I don't need to be there as long as other people can do it, I guess, right?
Yeah. It just doesn't, it totally opens up versus, but then the following week is Thanksgiving, so probably should do the week of the 6th and the week of the 13th, unless you want to squeeze one in on, yeah, it's a tough one. It's a tough time of year.
Could we do the Saturday, the 28th? Or are we not doing Saturday?
I'm at Boston College that day.
Football game?
It's a football game. Again, it doesn't have to be around my schedule, but if we could, I mean, even if we could do, if you did the 8th, the 1st and the 8th or something like that, if we ended up doing 2 Wednesdays, I could do the 1st, I just couldn't do the 8th. And then you could do the 8th, but couldn't do the 1st. So you and I could swap out. If we could get like 3 and 3.
So were we gonna try for Saturday, or
I
it
think we're
just
gonna
is
try for-
difficult
We
to
can
make that
try.
work?
Does the 4th work for anybody?
It doesn't work for me.
Does the 11th work for anybody?
It's
Veterans
Veterans
Day.
Day, does that
Oh.
matter?
Doesn't work for me.
So maybe Saturdays are out just because of the,
Yeah, the time of year is not good for Saturdays.
Well, why do we have to do this now? I mean, we're not going to be doing the public hearings until January, right?
Well, I think that we need to know where we're going to do the overlays in order to be able to write the bylaw.
Yeah, and the legal ad and all that good stuff, you're going to want to lay out where
I hear you.
you need,
So is the 2nd out, November 2nd?
it's a Thursday.
Yeah,
For
it's a
senior
Thursday.
Oh,
center
that's
it
right,
is.
Thursday's out. It'll be tough getting people there on a Friday, I
Yes.
think. And the 4th is out, so then we have the 6th.
I think we might be just best served skipping the Saturdays and going Wednesday, the 1st, and Wednesday, the 8th.
That's good for me.
Can you make either of those?
I can make the 8th.
Okay. Right now, I can do like both of those personally. With some pain, but still do it.
I could do the 1st.
I could do both the 1st and the 8th.
I'm good for both, too.
What time?
what do you think, 6:30? Or do you want to do a
So
7?
do you want to do like we did before, one 5:30, one 6:30?
Okay. Which one's which? The 1st at 5:30?
I don't have a preference.
Yeah, I don't have a preference.
That works for me. 1st at 5:30?
Yep.
That works.
First at 5:30, Lisa, does that work?
It does, thank you.
And then the 8th at 6:30.
And I'd be happy again, once the flyers are done for this, to get them in the electronic backpacks for the school again as well.
Oh, thank you, Lisa.
Great, thanks.
So are we going to do our own printing for that flyer? Yeah, right? We're
Yeah,
just-
yeah,
the
because I have a list of people I can send to,
We're just going to do electronic,
yeah, we'll just do like we did before. We don't have to do the townwide mail.
the email list and the
If need
news-
be, I'll send out,
news and announcements, the and e-flash,
and I can send it to the town meeting reps again. That
Yep.
wasn't a big deal.
and the school back.
Town meeting reps?
Oh, I'm sorry.
And my Southborough.
Meeting attendees, the frequent flyers.
Okay, yeah, that would be good. Like just a little cardy thing, I think that was effective.
Yeah,
We have the funding to do that?
You're not mailing, we're just,
it's just postage.
we're going to
Oh,
make,
I mean, you'll have my time
Well,
when the
the town-
flyer.
Are you going to mail the card? Is that what you're saying?
We were saying to the frequent flyers to town meetings.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Those are the
I'm
ones I
following.
stuffed
I
with
wasn't
two
following
things.
the lingo.
Oh.
I'm sorry. I'm thinking frequent flyer. I'm like, what? do you mean?
No, it's the regular attendees, the people that show up at town meeting.
Yeah,
That-
town meeting voters.
Yeah.
So Colleen, you and I create that thing again, and I'll have Reagan create it on PDF.
Okay, and I'll get some cardstock. We'll do the printing here ourselves.
Perfect.
Yeah, because we do have funding for, for these tasks.
Yeah.
So if you do want to send it to the printer, we could do that too, if it's advantageous time-wise.
Okay.
Think about it, but, depending on how many in the list for the town meeting voters when you did it last time?
So I think without literally counting, I think I did about 800.
Yeah, so that's a lot to
I mean,
print on the town machine. So we'll have to figure out if we maybe just send it to the printer. I mean, it's up
I
to
have the
you.
list, so the
Yeah.
list is there. It's not like, I mean, we could have it printed and I could do the stickers and throw it out. They put
Yeah,
postage
maybe
on it.
that. Just the printing,
Okay.
I'm thinking, the printing itself is
You and I can figure that part out.
intensive, yeah.
Okay.
We can do that.
Okay, anything else on this? Lisa, anything else on this?
No, Mimi, thank you.
Anybody in the room here want to comment on MBTA?
And we have 7 attendees in the Zoom waiting room, and
Anyone on Zoom, if you have a comment on this, if you raise your hand?
no hands raised right now.
Okay.
Thanks, Colleen, for all your work on this.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
Colleen. Very good.
The next item on the agenda is the Public Works Planning Board, Public Works Advisory Committee. Do you want to introduce us to this one, Debbie?
I will, thanks, Mimi. One of the select board goals was to abolish the Public Works Planning Board, and after a number of discussions, a small committee was put together to entertain the idea of replacing the PWPB with a Public Works Advisory Committee. So this is being led by Sam Stivers on the select board, and Mr. Tim Litt was assigned to help, but that's not even the right word.
Lassoed?
Support the effort, and I'm kind of the third wheel, I'll say. So Tim is here to give a presentation of the enormous amount of work and thought that he's put into, and time, that he's put into this kind of complicated situation. He's going to give an update on the current thinking and some of the conversations that he's already started to have with some of our stakeholders. So, introduce
Actually,
Tim
if
Litt.
you let me
Thank you.
share my screen, I can do this. Please. So while that's being set up, over the past few months, there's been a lot of discussion about the status and the fate of the current Public Works Planning Board and the tree warden, both here and at the Select Board and a few other places as well. So I think most of you were present in this room when the Select Board voted to revise its FY24 goal of abolishing the Public Works Planning Board. They assigned it, as Mr. Murias said, to Selectman Stivers, and with your encouragement, voted to ask her and me to develop the details. So you're a bit ahead of the curve, but what I'd like to do this evening is to make sure that everyone's on the same page on this, because it's been kind of fragmented, and you hear different things in different places, and I just want to get one story straight. So this is the first time, I think, that there'll be a coherent story told in a public forum. So if you'll excuse me when I tell you things you already know, it's to try and get the whole story out. So I have 2 short slide sets, and the first one is one that we've been using as we consult with the stakeholders, you being one of them. So if I can share my screen here. I will. Could be this one. Okay, so the point on this one is to sort of go through the what, why, and how of what's going on. And it represents the three of us. We are, by the way, not a committee. Sam owns this. We're unofficial helpers, or something like that. Okay, so in terms of background, I think we all know that the Department of Public Works has a pretty big impact on the town budget and services. It's one of the larger parts of town. Many of the stakeholders expect the Public Works Planning Board to have an active role. So the Public Works Planning Board was created by a special act of the legislature, which is Chapter 447, Acts of 1991, which also created the DPW from Cemetery, Highway, and Water, and abolished the Office of Tree Warden and replaced it by the Select Board, entertaining a little bit of legislative sleight of hand. So special acts are the legislature's response to home rule petitions that come from cities and towns. And once you have one, modifying it requires another home rule petition, an act of the legislature to do hopefully what you want. So home rule petitions have to be authorized by town meeting. The select board submits them to and negotiates with the legislature on behalf of the town. The legislature's response is not guaranteed. It's likely not quick. It's cumbersome. And the legislature, plus or minus some guardrails I'm going to put in, can modify, reject, delay, ignore, or maybe even do what we want. So it's pretty clear that change is needed. The current Public Works Planning Board's mission is not terribly clear if you actually read the special act, and it's disputed, which is part of why the stakeholders are upset. So initially, if you read the text, it was to advise the Select Board, or then Board of Selectmen, on planning, managing, and financing of the town. That's literally what it says. So implicit in that is it's limited to public works, meaning work done by the DPW. You know, that language might make you think that it was supposed to duplicate the advisory committee, but it's not. At least that wasn't the intent. And it was intended to represent town meeting as town meeting was implementing its vote to create the DPW. There was also, after town meeting, there was also a ballot initiative to confirm it. So this view of it is supported by the structure where the moderator, part of the legislature or the town meeting, has the majority. It's also supported by the recollections of those of us who were there. I was in town meeting. John Butler was involved in this. We both have the same view of this. Now, some of the current members, particularly the chair, believe that the mission has largely been accomplished, and so not much happens. So currently, there is pressure from a number of the stakeholders, you're one of them, to initiate guidance on priorities, long-term planning, projects, and to respond to public concerns. But in fact, the board rarely meets, it's passive, and many of the stakeholders are dissatisfied. The other thing I'll say is that the select board has not been a good tree warden. They don't have enough time to do the job right. Now that we're a town over 10,000, the members are not qualified arborists, which state law requires, absent this special act. Tree City and other initiatives want more expertise, I think, from the tree warden, not less. And the select board just isn't equipped to do that. The other thing I'll say is, you know, it's a job for one person, not a part-time job for 5 that already are doing the select board job as a part-time effort. None of this comes as news to the select board. I think they would agree with all of that. So to work on this, we will need in 2024 some town meeting articles. So as you've heard, the select board goals for FY24 include abolishing the Public Works Planning Board, which requires a town meeting vote, then action by the select board, action by the legislature. And because it modifies the same special act, I've argued both here and at the select board, that it should be bundled with reforming the tree warden. If you're going to touch something, do it all at once and get it over with. So under the plan, the Public Works Planning Board will be replaced by a bylaw or standing committee, which I hope is designed to meet stakeholder expectations. I know you folks and the select board both support a replacement, so it's not just abolish, it's do something that will better meet the stakeholders' expectations. And the nice thing about a bylaw committee is that future town meetings can restructure it, can evolve the charge, and we no longer have to go to the state with mommy may I, which is what we have to do for the special act. Not only that, going to town meeting is a whole lot faster than trying to go to town meeting, go to the select board, go to the legislature, and waiting for the wheels to turn. So stakeholders, I think, the select board obviously is one. I consider you as one, both because of the nature of the work, but also because you were one of the appointing authorities for the current Public Works Planning Board. So we don't want to change something out from under you if you're unhappy with the way it happens. The DPW superintendent, of course, and citizens have all been making noises about things that this board ought to be doing something about. So there are two actions required by town meeting to make this go forward. The first one, and the numbers will change, but as far as this project goes, I'm calling them first one Article 1, and that is to authorize a home rule petition to modify and replace Chapter 447 Acts of 1991, the Special Act. And Article 2 says, okay, establish the replacement committee. So to go a little bit deeper into these, Article 1 initiates the amendment of the Special Act in order to reestablish the Office of Tree Warden, which liberates the Select Board and also establishes the criteria consistent with state law. It dissolves the Public Works Planning Board, and because town meeting decided to rename the Board of Selectmen, we'll fix that in the Special Act too while we're at it. While you're at it. And I know I'd get yelled at if I didn't. So basically what the language of this does is it authorizes the Select Board to prepare and submit a home rule petition to the legislature to effect the amendment. It leaves the replacement committee to the town because we want control over it, and that's what Article 2 looks like. So what Article 2 says is, once the Public Works Planning Board is dissolved by the state, it establishes what I'm calling the Public Works Advisory Committee, which will be a standing bylaw committee, and you can call it the PWAC if you like. It's designed to meet our current needs and expectations. As I say, it can be updated. And it replaces the Public Works Planning Board, the Solid Waste Disposal Committee, which I don't think has ever been staffed or met in the past 5 years anyway, and but it belongs with Public Works Advisory. And it also, it turns out that we had a Green Technologies Committee whose responsibilities were transferred to the Public Works Planning Board, so we'll take those on too so that they're not left stranded. The idea is to have it work with advisory, capital, planning, and then some of the clients, Trails and Recreation, and others as necessary. Both Trails and Recreation make a lot of use of DPW for doing work. And so I imagine that the budgeting and the planning and the project review will all sort of overlap. So it's currently at 5 voting members. I'm going back and forth. The majority seems to think 5. I'm not sure if it should be 5 or 7, but it's one of those two. A minimum of 3 have some professional background. I'm not specifying what that is in the bylaw, but the kinds of things I have in mind are people like civil engineers or landscape architects or environmental engineers or specialists, retired DPW people, people who have some idea of what the work is, because you don't want a purely sort of random selection of people, but you also want to make sure that there is the opportunity for at-large, representation from the public. So that's why I made it, just a portion of the board. And then ex officio, the DPW superintendent, and I was thinking that the town planner would be a good addition so that, you have some insight into what's going on. Hey, I knew you'd like me for that. But the idea is that everyone's appointed, aside from the ex officio members, by the select board. That seems to fit the notion of it being DPW, and frankly, when we have multiple appointing authorities, it gets to be kind of busy and difficult to coordinate to get the right balance of people. And it doesn't seem like something that it's worth fragmenting, but of course, if you have an opinion, happy to hear it. The idea is that it advises the select board and the superintendent of public works. It is to assist with establishing priorities and long-term planning for significant public works projects. Significant is an important word there. It may evaluate or develop options to be considered for projects that deviate from their plans in scope, expense, or schedule. You can think of some of the things that have happened recently where you would have wished to have more people looking at it. It may also assist in locating or evaluating the desirability of external funding, like grants. You can imagine where we've gotten into trouble for not having enough eyes on grants in the past. And it becomes a focal point for communications to and from the public about projects, including project notices, hearings, transparency. Again, if we can offload hearings from the select board so that at least the first level of them happen here, they're more likely to get a thorough hearing, and the select board doesn't need the work. They can always have a hearing if they want to. Important point is that it does not manage or direct the superintendent of public works, employees, or projects. It's purely an advisory committee, and the idea is to help with the big picture. So that's, in 6 or 7 slides, sort of where we are, or what I'm trying to do. The other set of slides talks about where we are. If you want to do questions on this first, we can do that. Let me go on.
Mr. Stein?
Great job, Mr. Litt. Thank you very much for taking the project on in conjunction with Mr. Maria and Mr. Stivers. So the tree warden, would that be an appointed?
It will be per Mass General Laws, what is it, 10640 something or other. It's appointed by the Board of Selectmen, and the state law that I reference requires that the tree warden be a qualified arborist and have a pesticide license.
And
And there's a budget implication for that.
so would the tree warden be like a contracted?
I'm not going to prescribe that. It could be a contractor, it could be an employee, it could be a part-time employee, it could be a full-time employee. That's up to the selectmen and advisory through the budget process. But the idea is that it's someone who is qualified. You'll notice also that the state law allows it for there being deputy tree wardens.
So is that something that we might want to refine? Those types of details?
So I don't want to put that into the bylaw. I think that will come out of the budget process, and it's something that may change over time. I mean, we may start with a contractor and finding that, it's a 10-hour-a-week job, and then as people dig into it, we may find, in 3 years or 5 years that it's a full-time job. I don't know, and it doesn't seem like something to hard code.
So my feedback to that is, if we're going to say that the select board has not fulfilled the role, we really would want to know. I think that the town is going to say, well, what is the role? What is the requirement? What does this mean?
Sure.
And be more likely to support this initiative if we are able to quantify and
Well, I think that's
nail it down.
that's a question we can ask, and maybe Mr. Muria, who's go off and look at what other towns are doing, can find out, how much time they're spending on this sort of thing. But again, I don't think it's a bylaw question so much as a budget and personnel board and, that sort of thing.
So, and the tree warden would be reporting to the Board of Selectmen or to the superintendent of DPW?
So the way I have it written is that he's appointed by the Board of Selectmen and is supervised by this DPW superintendent, because the two are intertwined, and the Board of Selectmen are not good, day-to-day managers. They're good at setting policy and sorting out disputes.
So like who would be doing like the annual review of the tree warden?
I would expect that to be the DPW superintendent. And I would expect that if stakeholders are not happy or conversely are extremely happy, then they would be, solicited for feedback in the normal performance appraisal process.
So just going back to the notion of the stakeholders.
Sure.
We were talking about select board, planning board, and residents. I didn't hear advisory. Just out of curiosity, where do they fit into the scheme of things here? And
So,
pardon my ignorance, I don't know what advisory has had to do with the current Public Works Planning Board, if anything.
well, the current Public Works Planning Board hasn't met in years, so no one's had much to do with it.
Fair.
Seriously,
I guess in principle, or
in principle, what I'm
theoretically.
looking at
what would-
here is, I expect advisory to be involved through the normal budget process, because both advisory and capital look at the larger DPW projects and what's going on. And they both will make recommendations, to town meeting, again, through the budget process. But I don't think I think they're concerned about the finance, but I don't think they're stakeholders in the outcomes of the project, by and large.
Okay, thanks very much.
Sure.
Good stuff.
Ms. Houlihan?
Thanks, Mr. Litt. Appreciate your time and attention to this. I guess I'm on the same wavelength with Jesse regarding appointment of the town warden, tree warden. And what about thinking about, instead of an appointment, either contractor or employee?
Well, you can appoint.
Language.
You can appoint a contractor. I mean, the fact that that the tree warden is appointed by the selectmen is what's in the state statute, absent our special act. So it basically says, for a town, where the town is, for a town, the tree warden is appointed by the selectmen, and for a town greater than 10,000, there are some qualifications that the appointee must have. That doesn't prevent the selectmen from appointing a contractor. I mean, that's done with other jobs in the town. So, again, we're not locking in one way or the other.
But you lock out an employee with an appointment.
No, I mean, our current tree warden designee is an employee who is appointed. I mean, the selectmen appoint employees all the time. I mean, our town manager, Mark Purple, is appointed as the purchasing officer for the town.
I guess I'm meaning that we would, I guess I'd prefer an employee of the town to be the tree warden versus an appointed, I wouldn't want to just say, just because someone has an arborist, we're going to appoint them the tree warden. I'd rather have that an employee and you interview for the position.
Well, the selectmen do interview for most of their appointments. And that's, certainly feedback, but I don't think we can require that without.
Well, we need a
going-
budget.
Well, there are a couple of things. I mean, one is, I'm trying very hard to fit the tree warden back into the way the state wants tree wardens to work. So, you know, we don't have special things to worry about. And the way the state works is the tree warden is appointed by the selectmen. Now, anyone can certainly go to the selectmen and say, gosh, we really think there's enough work here for it to be an employee, and that should happen. And then you go to the personnel board and you try and justify the position from a structural point of view, and you go to advisory to say, yep, we've got to get the budget for it. And then you have a tree warden and maybe a deputy tree warden and maybe a junior tree warden auxiliary, or you know, whatever else we need. But it's not something, I think that's more a policy question than it is
By law.
how we make the law work for us.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So,
Ms. DeMaria?
well, I just wanted to add a couple of things, 'cause this is the one point I was stuck on. I mean, on balance, we really want something that passes at town meeting. So, you know, I think that I understand Mr. Litt's perspective and also Mr. Stiver's in feeling like we shouldn't focus so much on the tree warden. But I will tell you other towns do other things. There's a sentiment that runs through our town that you can have a pesticide license and take an online course and you're trained in arboriculture. And I think that's not what being a Tree City USA is about, not being what a green community is about. And for small towns like ours that are trying to retain the beauty and the scenic nature, we've heard again and again that we really want to step up this activity. So I'm a little bit torn about that as well. At some point in time, when we brought on Christina Bezanson to come and speak with us, I asked her what she felt about that, because she's been a municipal tree warden before, and she also teaches arboriculture. She told me that when she worked for a municipal, which I think was in maybe Virginia or Maryland, she worked for either the Parks and Rec Department or the Planning Board. So in other communities, there are ways, you know, they do things differently because it resolves the problem of conflict. So I love that idea, to be honest. I don't know whether Southborough is ready for that. But I don't think that, you know, when I do a search, I go online and I look to see who has what kind of license in town. I have a pharmacy license, and I look to see what does everybody else have. There's 100 or more people with a pesticide. Drivers, pesticide, but that doesn't make them an arborist. So, and the way that the law is written is they must be trained in arboriculture. And so that's even more nebulous. That means that what, they take a class? And so I am troubled by that, and if the planning board has troubles with that too, I'm kind of proud of that. Because I think that if we leave it to the select board to say, hey, here's a 40-hour employee, but you know, we'll carve out some of that person's job because they just did an online course, I don't think that's what the people of Southborough are really looking for. So that's kind of the part that I have difficulty with. And I think that there also is a conflict with a tree warden reporting to DPW, and maybe I'm soured by what has happened in town over the last year, so I don't know, you know, maybe that's not, maybe it was not the way that most towns do it. But I did take on that piece to take a look at and see what other towns are doing, and so I will do that. But the idea of trying to keep it a little bit kind of according to law was really because we are looking to get something passed at town meeting. So we don't want to make that the controversial part.
So I'll add a couple of things
Yeah.
to that. One is that most of the powers of the tree warden do not come from the town or from the selectmen. They come from state law. So I mean, the tree warden has a whole collection of authorities. What is it, Chapter 87 and Friends. Sort of the second thing I'll say is that I think it would be very reasonable for those of you who have, strong opinions about what the job ought to be, to work on, a job description that says, these are the qualifications we think should be considered in appointing a tree warden. In the same way that people get together and say, this is what we're looking for in an IT manager or an accountant, a treasurer or whatever. And I can't speak for the select board, but by and large, they're reasonable people. So if you go to them with a thoughtful presentation and say, here it is, I think they will ask the obvious question, what does it cost? How many hours? Is it better to contract? Is it better to have an employee? But you can certainly drive this is what the job ought to be, and what the qualifications ought to be, in terms of detailing that nebulous thing in state law that says trained in arboriculture. I had an uncle who was a horticulturalist, and I can tell you, what, if I looked it up, I could tell you, what schools he went to and what degrees he got, and it wasn't, there wasn't online at the time, but it wasn't a magazine correspondence course. It was, a serious degree. So I think that's a reasonable thing to add. But I don't think that's something that we want to put in the bylaw as a way to get there.
Ms. Braccio?
Thank you. Thank you, Tim. Thank you for Deb and Sam. I guess I'm in a little bit of a different mindset. I think looking at it from a cost perspective, granted, we know that there have been tremendous issues in the past, but I think we've all worked very hard to kind of perfect a process, if you will. As far as the tree warden goes, we have the ability to have a arborist look at trees, that we need to have an arborist look at trees. When I think about the cost of actually hiring an arborist for just this, I think that's going to be a real hard sell at town meeting. And I think, again, we've got a process in place. It's paid through a stipend that's listed in the SAP. And again, I just worry about, whose definition of qualified are we going to use as well? Again, I look at the job that Mr. Leroy has done, in the last few public hearings that we've had and how smoothly they've gone. And, a lot of time and effort went into getting to this point. So I just want to be cognizant of that. And I do think that the cost is going to be a factor. And I understand we're a tree city, and, that trees have become a very important issue. But I just want to make sure we don't shut the door as well on an employee that I think could fill this role as well. So thank you.
I will say that I had that conversation in terms of the management challenge with, the current tree warden designee with Bill Cundiff. And, I think, exactly what one does there is, something that he's going to have to think about and come up with an answer for. He probably doesn't fit our current definition of, a trained arborist, horticulturalist, whatever. But, does it become something that, he is the number one helper, he's the organizer, he takes care of the things that he's good at? Or does he do something completely different? That's a management question, and it's not something I think, for us to go after. And let's see.
Is it my turn?
I think it's your turn.
Thank you, Tim, Debbie, and Sam. Very thorough. I really appreciate it. Just to clarify, the state does not require an arborist. It requires tree warden shall be qualified by training and experience in the field of arboriculture and licensed by the Department of Food and Agriculture in accordance with the provisions of Section 10. That's the the pesticides.
Yes, I think that's consistent with what I've said.
Well, you said the state required an arborist for,
No, I said someone trained in arboriculture.
I'll listen to the playback.
Okay. If that's not what I said, that's what I meant to say.
So as Lisa said, that's difficult to define, qualified by training and experience in the field of arboriculture. And I would argue that I think that we had bad management, and I think that the tree warden designee was not allowed to do his job in the past. And I've been very involved in all the tree hearings and walked with Mr. Leroy to all the trees. I find him to be very knowledgeable, and anything that we had a question with, we had the arborist, so it's easy to get an arborist to help us out. And I would question whether there's enough work to have a full-time arborist on staff, because I think Christina, when she worked in a big city, and yeah.
You would split towns. I think even Westborough has a part-time. I think they split it with another town. It's a half-time position or something. Maybe not Westborough, but several of the towns.
Well, I think Westborough, it's their DPW superintendent who's their tree warden, who Christina spoke very highly of.
Okay. So some towns have a part-time position. Doesn't have to be full-time.
Yeah.
And by the way, some towns have a model where that person also does tree work. You have to remember that the cost of what we're spending to chop down trees or cut limbs, I don't know what that is, but in some towns, they do it internally within the town. That's part of the job. So I think when we look, and we're not going to look at the cost, but when one is to look at the cost, they really need to look at the whole thing and what can be done by buying a cherry picker or a piece of equipment where you can do a lot of the work yourself. And that's what Christina did.
And I wonder what the liability insurance would be.
Well, they're insured, yeah, of course.
Yeah, so I think great job, and I agree. I think that we can, write a policy to get more specific in what we want the tree warden to do. But I think that keeping it broad in the bylaw is the correct path to take.
Yeah, I think it would be a job description rather than policy, but anyway. So,
Or a job description.
so these few slides won't take terribly long, but this is just an update on, so where are we, what have we done so far?
Somebody wants to ask a question. Can they ask a question first?
Could I make a statement?
Sure.
Freddie Gillespie, I'm speaking as a private citizen, but I was out at Breakneck Hill Conservation Land today in my role as the steward for the Breakneck Hill Conservation Land, as well as last week I was at the hot zone for the newly documented spotted lanternfly in Fayetteville. And as you may know, through the master plan, the Open Space Preservation Commission has been charged with managing all the invasive species in the town of Southborough, or not managing them, but coming up with plans and dealing with them, plants, animals, insects, anything. So anyhow, I saw the infestation in Fayetteville, and it was literally as bad as anything you've ever seen on any horror movie spotted lanternfly infestation. And it was only on a couple of trees. So then today we're out at Breakneck Hill. We're dealing with some invasive removal of the tree of heaven. And while I'm there, coming through the woods on a trail, is a man who looked official. I said, "You look official," and he said he was the USDA, coming to look at he had spotted some tree of heaven out on the Breakneck Hill and with some spotted lanternfly. So a little while later, I'm underneath the invasive tree of heaven, which attracted the spotted lanternfly, which is going to damage your apple and grapes and other agricultural uses, which is why USDA and also the Department of Agricultural Resources, who we're working with, are involved. So I'm standing under the tree of heaven with spotted lanternfly at my shoulder, and I look down on the ground, and there's the telltale signs of, and I checked it, and it was the invasive jumping worms, which will actually take out trees because they destroy the soil and trees will tip over in addition to other problems. So right there, that's, one, I was just in a small area, and I'm telling you this because between that and the emerald ash borer, which is going to take out every single ash tree, we've got also beech trees are having a blight, apple trees are having a blight. We are in an unprecedented time, never mind the typical, older trees on the roads. We are in an unprecedented time of really, we have no idea what the impact to our native trees are. And you're going to be seeing this. So I urge you to be very careful, as you seem to be, in deciding what role you want an arborist to take on, because it's not the role of everything has changed, and it changed, it's been changing, but this is, you'd have to see it to believe it. And, we're all going to be witnessing it in the very near future. So I thank you for your care, but I think you also have to look into the fact we are going to be losing an awful lot of our trees. And you combine that with flooding and drought, other stresses, and, we have to be thoughtful in planning, and as these trees come down, what are we going to do? And there needs to be a bigger plan than the Open Space Preservation Commission can come up with. So I hope we can all work together on this. Thank you.
Can you grab the timer back there on your way? So in terms of, and I think what Freddie just said is important in terms of sizing the role, but I don't think it impacts what we're trying to do in terms of getting back to an active functioning organization on both of these fronts. So in terms of what we've managed to get done so far, we've refined, abolished the Public Works Planning Board into, as I've discussed, amend the special act, replace the Public Works Planning Board, and we have a team of people who's working on it. There is a project plan, which I don't display externally. You'll see the timeline in a little bit. And there are draft articles for town meeting that go through the details and all the funny legal language. I believe those are in your Dropbox if you want to look at them. I'm not sure you want to spend time on them this evening, but be happy to talk about them. There's also a draft petition to the legislature. That's not required until we get through town meeting, and that will probably change some more with legal review, so I'm not exposing that at the moment. But the basic work is done for that as well. And as you can tell, we have presentations to try and tell people about what's going on. I also spent about an hour or so in detail with all of those documents with Bill Cundiff. He was very supportive about it. He had a couple of questions, which I answered. And he was already saying, well, gee, I could use a committee like this for, and he started going down the list and the problems he had that he thought this would be helpful for. So he's definitely on board and supportive, and I think that's useful. We're continuing, in terms of next steps, we're continuing to review and refine, and we've got a few open issues we're working. The documents, do get updated. Hopefully sometime soon I'll get permission to talk to town council about this and get, we'll have the style points discussions about, is it a comma and is it a whence or a wherefore? And we also will need to engage with Senator Eldridge and Representative Donahue because once this is approved, petition ends up, what you want to have end up is a bill introduced in both the House and the Senate at the same time, and it then goes through this long process. In terms of key dates, the warrant, as you may remember, opens on December 12th and closes on February 6th. So I'm trying to make sure that we're well ahead of that process. And then there will be some public education. So if you look at the way the legislature works, it works on 2-year cycles starting in odd years. And given that town meeting is going to be in next year in 2024, the Attorney General might get around to looking at some of this stuff in August or September. It's sometimes been later than that. Odds are the right thing to do is to submit the petition to the legislature in around January of 2025, and then we'll see, if they take the full 2 years, if they do it in the first week, I don't know, but that's the reason for engaging the senator and the representative, is A, to get it on their horizon, B, to make sure that as best we can, what we submit to them is what they want to see, rather than have to go back and forth with multiple iterations. The way the bylaw is written is that it takes effect after Attorney General review and after the special act is amended. Doesn't really matter what order that happens in, but it's likely to be that way. So here's the sort of the timeline that I've laid out for this. You can see the second, bullet from the right is I'm here talking with you, and sort of next up is going to be advisory and capital if they're willing to talk to me, and then we'll continue on to the other stakeholders. There'll be final legal review by the time the warrant closes on February 6th. And then hopefully with your help and the help of others, we'll have the challenge of voter education so that town meeting is a smooth process. Once town meeting has voted, I don't believe Article 1 needs approval by the Attorney General, although I'll check on that. It just authorizes the selectmen to do something. It's not a bylaw. Then the select board has to vote to submit the home rule petition. There may be some negotiation with the legislature as it goes through the 3 readings and committee processes in both places and reconciliation and all that stuff. And hopefully the legislature then enacts it, and then we get to appoint members and get it to work. And that is what I have for you this evening. I do thank you for your engagement and your attention.
Thank you. Does anyone else have anything else for Tim? Tim, do you know why the select board was tree warden? Like, it seems to make very little sense.
Well, what I know is that there was sort of this question of, if you're going to merge DPW, what do you do with tree warden, because all the equipment is there and the budget is there and the special act merges that in. It's not actually clear. I don't think the special act was particularly well drafted. I mean, you see that in the definition of the Public Works Planning Board, and you sort of see it when you start looking at how the tree warden stuff works. So it's not immediately clear to me that they really intended the Board of Selectmen to be the tree warden.
Because
It is.
the board didn't appear to know until,
Recently.
yeah, 2021 or 2019 or something.
Yeah. I can't give you a rational reason why that might have been. I did, by chance, sit next to our former town council at a recent meeting and asked him if he'd been involved with any of this, because I had that question and a few others. And he very carefully went through his dates, and he says, well, I was a selectman, and that ended before this thing happened. And then I was town council, and that happened after.
Oh, so he,
So he just
he
stuck right
he
through
fit in the little wedge there, huh?
I was hoping for answers, but there aren't any from him on that.
Thank you. Thank you, Sam and Debbie. Good work.
The only thing I was going to say is, I think in the Dropbox, we did put a copy of the warrant articles. And at some point, I think that we probably would want I don't think you're going to come back again, Tim, are you?
I can come back.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, we want to make sure that we're happy, the planning board is happy with the wording in the articles, and so we'll have to put that on a future
If you
topic.
have comments on the wording or the details of that, send them to Mr. Murray or send them to me, and, we'll work on that. I would, hope that, when we get a bit closer to town meeting, that you folks would take a vote that says, you support this, so that we can put that out in front of people.
So wouldn't there be public hearings?
No, this doesn't require a public hearing. As a warrant article, it will go before the advisory committee formally, because it's a selectmen's article, they will discuss it. I don't know that they'll choose to have a hearing on it. And, what I've done in the past with, this is not the first time that I've created a committee for the town. What I've done in the past for the ones that seemed interesting enough is, held a forum at the library and some of their, public information sessions. I think the question on this one, and it's something for you folks to think about, is, gee, how engaged are people going to be in this particular issue? I mean, it's something that you all are very passionate about for good reason. It's something that I picked up because it didn't seem like it was on the right course a while ago. But, I'm not sure if this is going to be one of those, oh yes, everyone's in favor, we'll go vote for it things, or if they're going to be people who are somehow passionate against it for some reason. And that I don't know where we are on that yet. True enough. Thanks again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anything else on this? Next item, public hearing, St. Mark's School parking lot at St. Mark Street, major site plan.
So just to give you a quick update, the bottom line is that St. Mark's School has asked to continue without testimony the public hearing for major site plan approval. They're working on addressing the comments that Fuss and O'Neill provided, which were predominantly related to lighting and the photometric plan. In the meantime, from the last meeting that was continued, I've received an email from the building commissioner, Casey Burlingame. He was asked by the applicant to opine on whether a special permit was required or not, and he opined that there would, a special permit is not required to go before the planning board for the parking of more than 3 spaces. Trying to just see it here. Special permit would be anyway. Yeah, so that satisfied the comment number 1, but there were still 6 or 7 comments related to lighting. What else did we get here? That done. Nope, so that's it. So they did request, and we have an extension request signed by the applicant's representative, Rob Kuklowitz from St. Mark's School.
So I'd like to make a motion that the board extend the decision deadline for 25 Marlborough Road, major site plan approval for a parking lot for St. Mark's School to December 1st, 2023, and that we continue this public hearing to our November 6th, 2023 meeting at 7 p.m.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, Latrell, yes?
Stein, yes?
Houlihan, yes.
Demiria, yes?
Braccio, yes.
All right, and we just need a signature on that. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is a discussion item, residents at Park Central 40B. We could just do a recap of the hearing opening. ZBA opened their hearing on October 11th. The proponent gave a presentation. Then there were many legal questions. Things that I'm still not clear on. One of the big things that came out is there's a covenant with the abutters, which questions whether they have control of that site because it restricts the use of the land for a period of time. And it was unclear. I guess town council wants to hear arguments from both sides. I don't know where we go from there. And I don't know how this plays out because I guess the next court hearing is December 20th. And ZBA, their 180 days is over in April, so I'm not an attorney, but I think it's very unlikely that on December 20th there'll be any decision on that. So it will probably still be up in the air when the ZBA has to make a decision. And I don't know if they can condition it. So that's one of my major questions. The other issue was on the subdivision. So Karina, David Williams, Jay and I had talked briefly about the process. And, he felt very confident that, the ZBA can do the subdivision as long as it's within the 40B locus. But I don't think he had seen the preliminary subdivision plan, so that he questioned a lot of that because it's, 17 acres is within the locus, and they're subdividing 101 acres into 6 lots. So I'm still not clear, because he kept saying, I don't know if the planning board would waive that, so I'm still not clear if we're getting subdivision or if ZBA is, so that, those were my major takeaways from the opening. Yeah, go ahead, Karina.
So also, just to let you know that Lara Davis, the CBA admin, has set up a nice web page dedicated strictly to this project. So you should be able to find everything there. She also set it up that you can get e-alerts for anything new that gets posted there. So if anybody wants to stay on top of that, they can sign up for those. Number 2, we also received a copy of an email from the recused ZBA member with concerns related to the covenant that exists there. And that came from the ZBA, so that is likely on their website already. And then thirdly, I was called by David Williams, the chair of the ZBA, on Friday last week. And he was looking for some assistance to help find a peer review consultant. So what I did is I reached out to Fuss & O'Neill, who's currently our town engineering consultant, and I sent them the information. They're going to look at it and get back to me at the beginning of this week. David is not around for a couple weeks. He's on vacation. So in the meantime, I had also I had recommended to David Williams to reach out to town council, because town council had said that he could recommend a couple of firms that he knows has the ability to do this as well. And he mentioned a couple consultants. So one of them I'll reach out to and send the information as well, so they can get a jump start on it, because I know they're eager to get a peer review consultant. And that consultant doesn't have to be procured. They just need to formulate a contract in which the select board signs off on as the contract administrator for the ZBA. So that's it. That's the update. So that's moving forward too. I guess at that meeting, they wanted the planning board to assist with the consulting with the planning department. So that's well on its way.
Mr. Stein? Ms. Houlihan.
Thanks. Yeah, so first of all, I thought the zoning board of appeals, the meeting was really well run. I think they are, really prepared for this and seemingly collaborative, and just the way that they've already had outreach and the way that David Williams, the chair, is running that. So I was pleasantly surprised by not surprised, but relieved, I guess, that it's a collaborative process up front. Mimi, I would agree with you. I was not in the room, but I was on the Zoom meeting, and it almost was like a litigation happening amongst the two attorneys in the room, one on the Zoom and our own town council. So I think there's quite a lot of legal questions, so hopefully they can figure that out, because there is a worry, and I think Ms. Meath summarized it nicely in her letter, that there could be some town implications if we proceed with having these conversations, if it truly is, the covenant suggests that he can't have conversations with the town. So having some resolution will be important. But I thought it was overall a very well-run meeting.
Mr. Maria.
I have to agree as well, and I don't have any other comments. I found it fascinating to watch. But there's a lot of legal questions. Some of them this board has already identified, and we have to see how things play out. So, thank you.
And I just wanted to mention quickly that the planning board was asked to attend via Zoom because there are capacity limitations in the public safety room where the hearing was held. Otherwise, the planning board would have been there in person. Ms. Braccio.
Thank you. Nothing further to add. I agree with everything that's been said. And hopefully they'll just continue to move forward in the positive light, and collaborating with the planning board as well. So that's all. Thank you.
Are there any questions or comments? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Freddie Gillespie, Chair of the Open Space Preservation Commission, and we have discussed this briefly, and one of the concerns that came up is, so I don't know how the law would play out, but to us with layman's knowledge, that you have a 101-acre parcel, or over, little over, and there's no parcel for the 40B. So if you're going to subdivide that to create the 40B parcel, it seems that should be in front of the planning board, and then once the parcel's created, that parcel would get the 40B protection. And our interest is because when you do a subdivision, there's 10% set aside as open space, and then depending on what else is happening on the other parcels, there could even be more than 10%. And it would be how that 10% is set up, and the language for the definition is, coherent, and so it's not a little speck here and a little speck there. And, the 19.7 acres, that's about 2 acres versus out of the 10 that we would get approximately for 10%, right? But it makes a difference when you have a 10-acre parcel. And looking at the whole parcel, where's that going to be? And this also comes into play because there's another 40B coming up with the same situation of subdividing an existing parcel. And I know you're looking at it thoroughly, and one would hope that if the ZBA is the one doing the subdivision, that they would understand that the 40B exemption doesn't hold for the whole parcel. But to me, it doesn't seem like it should be put there, because you're the board that is knowledgeable and experienced in subdivision. So why give it to a board that's not when the whole parcel isn't 40B? And that seems to be a problem we got into the last time, that they were taking 40B exemptions for parcels, part of the project that wasn't 40B. Not being an attorney, I'm also concerned about the road going in the back if it's got 40B, and I raised this isn't an open space issue, so I'll step back on that. But I was at the site walk, and I raised it at the very beginning, that you don't get exemptions for a road that opens up a property. The whole road has to be by the regular, it's not a 40B road, right? So it doesn't get the exemptions. It needs to go through the regular process. And it just seems early on, somebody should be deciding that the regular process needs to be followed for a project that's not a 40B project until you do these other things. You don't have a 40B parcel until you subdivide it. So I don't see how you can give an exemption to have the ZBA do the subdivision before it's actually a 40B parcel. So I just wanted to put that on the record. Thank you.
Thank you.
We currently have 6 attendees in the Zoom room and no hands raised.
I think I asked. Did I ask you, Lisa?
You did, Mimi, thank you.
Anything else on this? So I guess we just kind of stay on top of the subdivision and see what happens. That was the exact question that I asked town council. I'm not an attorney, but in my simple mind, it seemed to make sense that the subdivision would come to the planning board, would approve the subdivision, and then the ZBA could waive any regulations on the 40B locus that made the project, difficult to construct. But as I said, I'm not an attorney, so we'll see. Evidently, our town council has significant concerns with what they put forth, so we'll see what happens there. I don't have anything else, do you? Okay,
No, that's it.
we will move on.
I'll continue to forward any information to you in case you don't get it in a direct email.
Great, thank you. Next item on the agenda is a discussion item, public shade tree policy and the proposed select board updates.
So quick, just to get you oriented, I had asked Sam Stivers to send us a copy of the most current version, and I distributed that to you folks. And I had mentioned to Mimi that there was a part in, a small phrase in 6E that was included that you had requested. So that's been in the Dropbox for your review, and I think that it was continued to the October 24th Select Board meeting.
Yes. So Sam Stivers, Al Hamilton, Lisa, and I worked on making some requested changes to the public shade tree policy. Sam had felt that the requirement for native trees was in conflict with our code, so he had removed the reference, and instead of removing the reference, we had put in that the trees must be on the 2019 Southborough tree list with a preference for natives. And the Southborough tree list is all natives or native cultivars. So no tree of heaven on the list. So I guess I would ask the board if they're in favor of the policy as is, so we can report to the select board. Mr. Stein.
I'm going to defer at this point. I'm not 100% committed one either way. Thanks.
Ms. Houlihan.
Mimi, I know we've gone back and forth, and there was a second iteration where you had requested. So with the last change, is that where they've added that in? And so you're comfortable with this last round of edits? I would support this last round of edits.
Mr. Maria.
Yeah, I support you as well. Thanks.
Ms. Braccio.
Nothing further, other than to say thank you, Mimi, for spearheading this.
Thank you. So should we just vote that we support it?
So moved.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, Latrell, yes?
Stein, yes?
Houlihan, yes?
Demiria, yes.
Braccio, yes.
Would you like a notice of vote sent to the select board?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay.
Next item on the agenda. 21 Highland Street Future Use Committee.
Just see. You keep it all in your head so nicely. Just quickly, on October 10th, a letter was drafted from the planning board to the select board, as discussed at the last planning board meeting, to request a seat on any future 21 Highland Street committee that was being formed. And then I'll pass it off to you, Mimi, because you attended the meeting.
Yeah, so the letter wasn't sent because it was drafted on the 10th, but I was at the meeting and
Oh, right.
informed the board that that the planning board had voted that we would like an appointee on the 21 Highland Future Use Committee. And there was Al Hamilton was put in charge of writing a draft charge and the draft makeup of the committee. And in that draft committee makeup, there was an appointee from the planning board, which during the discussion of the board, they removed the planning board. And they also removed the appointee from Shopsy because they were concerned with 9 people on the committee and they wanted it 7, so they couldn't, well, a couple things. The chair said he didn't know why planning board wanted to be on it. And he also said that we had a member on the previous 21 Highland committee, which there was not a planning board appointee. There was a Shopsy appointee who happened to be a planning board member, so that was incorrect. We did not have a seat at the table before. I did say that when I informed the select board of our vote, that we are the elected board in charge of future planning for the town, which is why we wanted to be on the committee, but that did nothing, evidently. So we're not on the committee.
Who is on the committee?
An appointee from Open Space, Recreation, Historical, 2 committee members who live within a half-mile of the site, and 2 at-large.
Okay.
Is that
So
7?
there is an agenda posted for a meeting on Wednesday at the Southborough Public Safety Complex for a roundtable discussion. And this was actually sort of initiated by Shopsy. Were you aware of this?
Yeah, we talked about it today.
Yeah, I think Karina told me.
Okay.
When is that?
So this is happening Wednesday at 7 p.m. And there is a
Here's the
Zoom.
agenda.
There's a virtual,
It's just not posted here, but that's the agenda.
has that not been posted?
I didn't look if it was posted yet, but I received
Okay.
that, so ahead of time.
Thank you, Mr. Litt.
It is posted.
So I would encourage anyone who's interested in Shopsy's position and, in collaboration with those other committees to attend.
I think the select board has determined that affordable housing can't go in that building, so I think that's why Shopsy was also jettisoned from the committee. Ms. Houlihan.
No comment.
Ms. DeMaria.
No comment.
Ms. Braccio.
One comment, just it's a little disappointing, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Anyone in the audience?
We currently
Anyone
have-
on Zoom?
Oh, sorry, we have 6 attendees in the Zoom, no hands raised.
The next item on the agenda is a discussion item, Master Plan Implementation Committee goals. And this is this Ms. DeMaria or you?
Okay, so, see if I can summarize this. So there's a request by the Master Plan Implementation Committee to get the opinion of the planning board in a joint session with the Select Board and Master Plan Implementation to try to take a look at the goals as we move forward into the funding time of year. I don't know if I'm quite saying that right, but an exercise that Sam Stivers had done seemed pretty successful, and I think what he's looking for now is for some more input from the planning board, and I'll just try to explain that a little bit. What he did is went through the, privately as a member of the select board, not representing the Master Plan Implementation Committee at all, but he took a look at the goals and recommendations and put together kind of a little sheet that he thought would be, goals that could, the other select board members might be interested in working on with him, and used it as a sort of a tool to, to work through the goal-setting process that happened, I think, in July. And just for the record, I'll just tell you what the four of them were. So we came up with four: increase housing diversity and affordability, improve connectivity and accessibility, broaden, increase the tax base, and continue investments for strong schools. So, some of his thoughts and recommendations, I'm sure, were taken into account. If you look at the select board goals, they have themes of this running through it. So the next wave is really for the select board to start the financial part, I guess, for the year, right? Funding and that sort of thing. What we realized on master plan implementation is that there are some committees that have really great goals, but they don't have any funding. And they might even be long-term goals. So then say, well, it doesn't matter because that's a long-term goal. But what Mr. Stivers brought up was, I'm not sure if I'm quite saying this right, but that it could be that there's a funding opportunity now. I think they have a consultant that helps them with funding opportunities. And so in, I think, the spirit of goodwill, he is saying, well, it would be really nice to hear from the planning board to see if we had priorities in our goals before they go through the the funding and financial aspect of funding some of these goals. As a master plan, we take no, implementation committee, we take no position. So, there's no, I guess, I didn't poll anybody on the master plan implementation committee to see, what do you think should be prioritized? But I think as a planning board, the idea that the planning board might have an opinion may not line up with Mr. Stivers' goals and what he presented to select board, but it could be that the planning board has our own set of prioritizations. And so what Mr. Stivers is thinking is that we would have a joint meeting between planning, select board, and master plan implementation. And that meeting has been difficult to schedule because evidently select board is not able to meet on the planning board timeline. And Colleen was helping out with trying to get some meeting going. But I've not gotten back to her yet with any particular dates. So it's kind of a long way of saying, I think that the idea that he's interested to hear from the planning board is very nice. And as a planning board member, I have some ideas that are different than Sam's. But I wanted to know if it's something that the planning board is interested to do. And I hope I explained that kind of okay.
So just so I understand, so you want to know what the planning board's priority in the master plan goals are?
So I think, Sam presented it to select board, and I don't recall, but I think the select board is also interested to know what the priorities are for the planning board. I don't believe it's just Sam's idea, although he was sort of driving this process. But I think he wants to be more inclusive and understand if we have any particular priorities. And of course, the way he did it was to take a look at all of the goals and recommendations and looking for common themes, and then what we call affinities. And he came up with the 4 that I just read. And now the planning board, if we choose to do that, may or may not have the same kind of goals. So it's really just an ask
Okay.
at this point.
Mr. Stein?
I mean, these goals, the ones on the document, master plan and implementation committee priority overview from June 11th, seem in line for me. I don't really have much comment other than that.
Ms. Houlihan?
So I will be honest, I haven't read, again, the master plan. If we do that, I think we should come to a conclusion amongst ourselves before engaging in the conversation with Select Board and the Implementation Committee. But I would support just a discussion amongst ourselves is what, are we aligned on the goals that were listed? Do we want to redefine them or reprioritize to be able to support 2025 budget process? I don't even know. Yes, it's coming. Okay.
Ms. Braccio?
I completely agree with Marty. Thank you.
Yeah, I do too. I think we need to discuss as a board. And are you looking for these broad, affinities that, these 4 things that are in that
Well,
email?
I mean, that's the way that he did it. I think there's definitely themes. As a planning board, a member, I can tell you, one of the themes I thought should have, I would have put, for example, would be something more to do with sustainability and open space, sort of on the trees, natural resource, something along that. I mean, so I could just say that, he was able to articulate what he thought, and it was probably very effective in the goal-setting process. So now that we're coming into the budget-setting process, if we're being invited for our opinion, that is one that I would like to see, because I'm not sure how that will play out. But, so what I did include a document in the Dropbox that Judith has put together for us, which is just all of the boards and committee goals, as it was printed in the master plan. That's I think the quickest way to take a look at everything without having to read the master plan all over again.
Yeah,
But yes,
that's what I was just referring to.
you were referring to that? Yeah.
That looks good to me. How did it get boiled down to 4 things from that?
So that was Sam Stivers that did that in his participation in the goal-setting process. Those were the things that he wanted to see, and he linked them to the goals that were in the master plan. So even though it says master plan implementation, the implementation committee didn't have any input into that, but I think he was saying it was sort of being driven from the work that implementation committee was doing. I think that they're fine goals. I think that, being asked for our opinion is an opportunity to bring something else to the table as they're thinking through the budgets.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm missing something. The June 11th document is a good summary of the master plan, right? And then somehow Sam trims it down to 4 things?
So when he was, so when he was going into goal setting, I guess he probably thought, okay, of everything in the master plan, these are the, because the way that exercise worked, from what I understand, they had the opportunity to put forward their thinking on what their priorities should be. And so those were his priorities.
Can he do that?
Well, I kind of regret that it says master plan implementation on there, because the implementation committee didn't have anything to do with it. But, those were his thoughts going in, and he had to negotiate with others.
Wait, Debbie, which document are you talking about? You and Jesse are talking about the Word document that says Master Plan Primary Goals for Prioritization, titled MPIC Priority
Right,
Overview?
right.
From
That
June
was
11th.
Yes, from
that-
June 11th. And then there's an overall Master Plan implementation goal list that's in the master plan.
Yeah.
That compiles all the goals.
Yeah, that's
related
the one we
goals.
should look at if we're going to do this sort of an exercise.
Mhm.
That date, the document dated June 11th is the one Sam created
Sam's.
as he brought that in for the goal discussion of the
Okay.
select board.
For select board discussion. I'd show those on the screen, but it's probably a lot of information, so if anybody's interested,
Yeah, and
we have them.
the other
and
thing
we'll post them with the minutes.
and I'm not sure I gave it to you, but the other thing is that the select board has 2024 goals. And I don't know, did I?
That's in the Dropbox.
Oh, I put that in the Dropbox as well. So, that's another document to look at. So presumably those are the priorities, and, we're getting asked for our opinion as well.
And they may be in tonight's meeting packet that's posted with the agenda. It was a large document, so I
Yes.
can't recall. But they're most likely in that document for the public if they want to see it there.
And I think the request was very nice, and I think also that what he did was very effective, because in looking at the select board goals, some of his wishes from this June 11th document, ended up to be goals. I think he had to negotiate with his other members, and we're not goal setting, but what we're asked is our thinking about priorities, and that has to do with the lineup of the budget.
So is it possible to maybe sequence that, to have just a discussion amongst ourselves, to kind of spend time on the master plan, the bigger document, not the June 11th, which I think is now biased, to that one perspective that Sam brings, and then bring up our conversation, and then sequentially, maybe after our next planning board, try to find a time that works between, whatever, 3 and 3 of us.
Like November 27th? That's the next meeting after November 6th.
I don't think their schedule lined up with ours. I think we had to find a separate time, is what Deb was suggesting.
Yeah, I think I was
There's
told there's
conflicts.
conflicts for the next several. I didn't check exact dates, but I think that there's conflicts with some of the members on our meeting dates. Yeah. We'll have to pick a different day.
Anything else from the board?
And just confirming that the goals list that we were talking about is in the meeting packet for tonight, so the public can go right to the planning board agenda location, and it's there.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Freddie Gillespie again, and I'm on the Open Space Preservation Commission, not speaking for the commission because we didn't know about this, but I wanted to give you a perspective that if you're moving forward on this, maybe somebody should talk to all the boards and committees and commissions that have been charged, because we had a representative on the Master Plan Committee. Did you meet for like 3 years? And our Open Space Commission regularly reviewed what was going in from our representative to the Master Plan Committee, as well as participated in public meetings on it. And we thought that the master plan came out with the goals and the priorities. And now I'm very confused, because another thing that happened is some of the things that we brought forth during the process, we weren't planning on being in charge of it. We were just saying this needs to get done. And then when the implementation happened, it was like, well, you either need to take it on or we will take it out of the plan. And then we were very concerned about that because we're not a department, we don't have staff, and we were assured that we didn't have to actually necessarily do it, but facilitate getting it done, and that funding and resources would be made available to our commission so we could move forward. And I will say, since the master plan came public and we have our charge and our marching orders is how it, seems how we've treated it, we go through it, we've gone through it, we're working on, implementing, like one of the things was the invasive species, so we're working before the spotted lanternfly got here. We actually thought the emerald ash borer was the big deal, but we're working with DAR, the Department of Agriculture Resources, to do a workshop, right? So we're being proactive. Lanternfly showed up a little bit sooner than we thought, but still, we're working on these issues that we were looking for support from the town, and now I'm hearing that maybe this isn't a priority, but it was a priority that we were charged with from the master plan. So I'm confused, do we have a master plan, or are we starting a new set of goals and priorities? And I'm just asking that maybe you talk with the committees and commissions that are actually working on it and thought they were going to get some support to help move this master plan forward. Thank you.
Mimi, do you want to address that?
No.
No, well, I can tell you that,
I'm not on the implementation
well, yeah, the
committee.
implementation committee takes like no position because we feel like it's not our role. But I think that there is an acknowledgement that there, as each of us are assigned to boards, committees, departments, that some of the more difficult cross-functional kinds of goals are really the ones that are going to get left behind if they don't get some attention. And I think possibly that's what Mr. Stivers was trying to do. And in terms of priority, I don't think I can speak to that. You could have a goal that's high priority, but you need some funding. And I think that this is an opportunity to say, okay, maybe this was long-term, this was the 10-year goal, but we might have a funding opportunity right now that might change the priority a little bit. I don't know, because I didn't have anything to do with setting the priority, but I just think that this is a nice opportunity to bring a different perspective that, we might want to do.
So the implementation committee, are there members that are assigned to work with the different boards and committees that contributed goals to the plan?
Yes, yeah.
So there's presumably somebody working with the Open Space Preservation Commission or following their goals?
Yes, or reaching out quarterly is how it's set up, yeah.
So that's how the implementation committee is supposed to work, is that they reach out to all the, well, individual members have certain committees that they reach out to. So I think that the select board is asking for the planning boards of our goals, our priority goals.
And I know that sounds, you have to move forward somehow, and you can't fund everything, but shouldn't that have, I'm just throwing this out there, shouldn't that have been looked at when we set short-term, long-term, mid-term goals, that if the master plan, I had confidence, thought that these things could be achieved within those timeframes. And when you start setting priorities amongst the already existing priorities, some of those are going to drop off. And I'd just like to know if I can stop doing some of the work, because we're working really hard. And I wasn't hearing any natural resources or open space on that list. And if we're not going to get funds to do it, we can't do it, so why are we, banging our head against the wall?
Yeah, so just to confirm that is the, that was Mr. Stiver's list, but it made its way, some of those sentiments, goals and recommendations made its way into select board goals. But I take this as an opportunity. When I looked at that list and I said, gee, there's no open space, there's no natural resource, there's no sustainability. And I know that, all ranked very high in the surveys. So I take it as the opportunity that, we can at least maybe have a discussion on some of these topics that are not maybe listed as select board goals, because we didn't have anything to do with the goal-setting process, right? That's a select board thing. But there could be some goals that are very important that need to be funded that are not select board goals, and I think this would be our opportunity to bring those up.
And the answer is no, you can't stop working really hard.
And I wouldn't, as you know. We've done an awful lot when we had a $150 budget. So I just don't want to see that, in planning. And I guess the confusion is the master plan is the planning board's document. And the selectmen are talking, it sounds like, creating their own separate priority list of some of the things within the master plan. And hopefully, what my ask is that the planning board, when you talk to yourselves, maybe talk to the committees that are charged with doing the work, because, if no one talks to us, you don't know what I know there's an implementation, but, how many months has this been out there? The implementation committee?
8 or
Yeah,
9.
so, it's not as, we talk about this every single meeting. And, we're not writing up reports because, then we wouldn't be able to do the work we're doing for the implementation. When she asks or comes to us, we would tell her. But I'm assuming that other committees may be doing the same sort of thing. And maybe they would like to be considered for funding for some of the projects they're working on. But if no one asks us. But it sounds like there's I'm hesitant to even call it parallel track, because you have a master plan, and then you have this other thing that might have some of the goals of the master plan on it, but I didn't hear any of the things we're working on it, so that was what I just wanted to make you aware of.
Yeah, and I'll just say one last thing, is that as we continue to work with the different committees, we are starting to understand that, like, for example, I work with Leah on the EDC, and I heard for the first time also that she has, she's talking to the EDC about housing choice, and that they wanted to develop a position. And one of the things she said, well, we probably have to, do something with another grant to find more information. Maybe that was the one-stop grant. I'm not exactly sure what she said. So that's an example where something presents itself. MBTA communities, they took that in, and they said, okay, in order for us to have a position or maybe tick a few things off of the goal list, we're probably going to need to ask for a grant. And so that would be an example, I think, where the select board may want to know, do you need money to do that sort of thing? On the master plan implementation, that's a question we haven't really been asking yet, because as we rolled it out, we only recently started hearing back from the committees. I can't do this if I don't have any money. Yes, we heard it from your committee, to be honest.
Before you rolled it out.
Before you roll that, yeah.
So, and I know the town's not made of money, but if you're setting priorities, I kind of thought that the master plan already kind of did that. And
I don't know, there's 200 goals and recommendations. I'm not sure it did that. Can you confirm that, Mimi? I don't think they're prioritized.
Well, in time frame.
Okay, short-term, long-term, and and midterm, okay. Thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
Is this mic on?
Can you hear her, Terry?
Is the mic on? Thank you. I see the thumbs up. Marguerite Landry, speaking as a private resident, I think that the exercise of finding goals was something where a lot of what the boards and committees seem to be doing is having to act reactively because something comes along. But I think the master plan is sort of a wish list, and it does have a lot of items in it. And I think this would be an opportunity to say, what do you, as any board, as the planning board, what would you, just a few things, that if you would pick out of that list to work on now, what do you think is important? Because it's hugely unwieldy. But just, I mean, not reacting to things being thrown at you, but just actively, what do you see as important for Southborough to do right now? And I think that would be a really good conversation between a lot of the boards. We can't do it all, obviously. Some of it will be moot. But what are 3 things you'd really like to see happen this year, for instance? That's my sense of it.
So my concern is when you have a board of, select board member,
I'm speaking as a private citizen.
I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about Mr. Stivers.
Yes.
List his priorities. To me, as a private citizen, as a elected official, it leaves me wondering, well, gee, what happened to the rest of the master plan? If this is the way our select board views this, as something that he can
But do you
pick
know
and
what-
choose what the priorities are,
When you do
that sort of makes the whole point of having an implementation committee and all these other boards and committees moot.
well, it's kind of back, but it's like when you do a personnel evaluation for somebody, you don't tell them 35 things they need to fix next year. You tell them the 4 most important things they need, or the 4 things that you think they can.
I don't think I agree with that.
It's a lot of, it's a lot of items. I think this was sort of try to get a
I think the disconnect is that the select board sometimes, in my opinion, just me talking, just seems to disregard everybody else's input and go off on their own agenda.
See, to me,
And
I
this is a
read it-
pattern we've seen
that I understand.
consistently,
I know.
and it frustrates us, or me,
I
excuse me.
think the request here, or the sort of indirect request here was, well, planning board, what do you think is important to work on? Let's talk about it, because we can't do all 1,000 items in the master plan. That was just my sense of it. I mean, the rest of the select board may have different ideas about it, but I think it's an attempt to say, we can't do all of it. I mean, what do you personally think is important to do? And I think that not everybody has the same 4 things that Sam had either. We talked
Most assuredly.
I just want to add, I was grateful that Sam looked to the master plan, because creating a goal like abolishing the Public Works Planning Board was nowhere in the master plan, and that seemed very personal. And I, and had there not been a select board meeting to discuss it, it wouldn't have been replaced with anything. So I think when we look at, we have to just acknowledge that the select board does set goals every year. And I was grateful that Sam looked to the master plan, and that was his list. Now he's asking for our opinion.
So Sam has his hand raised.
Oh, good, Sam. Set the record straight, Sam. Everything that
I
messed
just
up on.
promoted him to panelist, so he has a chance to speak to this.
Hi, Sam.
Good
can-
evening. Can you hear me?
You can defend yourself.
Thank you. This actually started out as a very simple concept, as a matter of fact. And to Jesse's point, this list that I had proposed as a starting point was not my personal list. What I did was I looked at the select board goals that were generated by our planning session, I guess, last July. And the comment that I'd made to the Master Plan Implementation Committee was, it would be interesting to first figure out where the select board is in terms of goals, because the select board has a fair amount of influence in determining the budgets. So if we could align what the select board felt was important to what the master plan implementation process felt was important, that would be a good way to work together and select things that might be able to be accomplished. Since there were, I think, 50 some odd goals out of the master plan, and as somebody mentioned, a couple hundred implementation steps, there's no way we're going to get all that done, certainly, but let's pick ones that people seem to be aligned on. And to Debbie and Marguerite's point, if there are places where the planning board feels things are important that were not part of the select board goal activity, then there's an opportunity to make those comments, suggestions, and have a discussion about getting some of those higher on the budget priorities, for example. So the goal, again, was to try to get people to work together on this in a way that will wind up with things that we can all together be behind in terms of trying to get some near-term progress on. So that was a simple concept. And the select board, I've mentioned that at select board meetings. I think there's support for having this meeting between planning board, select board, master plan and implementation committee to see where we can find common areas to push on together in this process. So that was the simple concept. And to Jesse's point, again, this was not my personal list trying to commandeer the process somehow, but to try to align things that we're all working together.
So, Mr. Stivers, what is the number of affinity topics that will be allowed? As far as making, it seems like you are distilling the master plan down to what is feasible from a budget standpoint, in effect. So I guess the question is, what is there room for on the list?
I don't know the answer to that, Jesse. The budget is obviously scarce resource. And so I picked those areas that seem to me to be common themes out of the select board goal setting process that also seem to have good overlap with the master plan committee. But I'm certainly not individually prepared to say that the number is 1 or 3 or 7 or whatever. But any guidance that the planning board can provide or any input that the planning board can provide in terms of what areas are important. And we've had one this evening, for example, that sounds like planning board is headed toward putting on the table, which I certainly encourage. So again, there's no specific number, there's no specific budget number at this point that we've allocated some X dollars out of the budget to support master plan goals. But I think that, to me, that's a conversation that we have and try to figure out, is there a way to define some things that both groups seem to believe are important and achievable.
So if I can just challenge this for a second, just for the sake of conversation, if
Sure.
there is no set number, why distill it down at all? There must be some set number in order, because you've pulled 4 things out and sort of pushed the rest aside. So how did you, I'm just trying to understand the thought process, how has this been quantified? Like why 4 instead of 5 or 6 or 8?
It was a very subjective process on my part. I looked at the select board goals and I looked over the master plan goals and I said, here are 4 areas that seem to have common support. And yeah, I could have driven it deeper and looked for other things or made a shorter list even, but that seemed to me to be a fairly workable list for discussion going forward here. So no magic behind that, just very subjective. And if you have a different view of that, Jesse, I'm certainly willing to entertain it. Or anybody else, for that matter.
The different view is, I don't know. I don't understand why we're doing this way at all. So you're basically saying we can't do everything, so here are the priorities, and you want to know what our priorities are.
Here are some things that seem to have support, and does the planning board agree, or does the planning board want to change that list? I think I'm certainly open to listening to other views of this. So no requirement. If the planning board doesn't want to engage in this, that's the planning board's choice, but I'd like to be able to work together on it, I guess.
Jesse, I think the question is, you've got a lot of expertise as a board, a huge amount. What do you think is the most important group of things to focus on in the next 2 years, say? I mean, you don't have to answer it, but it would interest me to know proactively what you would like to see happen.
No, and that's great. I personally, and the other board members will weigh in, I appreciate the opportunity. I hope that we're not just spinning our wheels and wasting time. I hope that our input is actually considered and, makes the list. I hope we make the cut.
Maybe one goal
with our input.
would be to see less frustration between 2 major boards.
Well, we appreciate that. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Ms. Houlihan.
Yeah, something just dawned on me, and then it just slipped my mind again. So something we do in corporate America is called a long-range planning process. It's a 5 to 7 year plan, which I think is what this master plan is, right? It's 10 years. We're now, it was 21, right? We're going into 24, so now we're at that 7 year. But wouldn't that long-range planning strategy, couldn't we think about it or contemplate it that way? I mean, the way that I would look at this is like almost putting the goals that have been deemed short-term, mid-term, long-term, and really looking at every group's goals, open space, conservation, planning, everybody had kind of components to that, and building that out and prioritizing. I mean, obviously, short-term, if we're looking at a 3-year window, what are the short-term priorities for our strategically? Like, I see what you're saying, Marguerite, is what is our strategy? You know, we want to get to kind of those open goals. But that's a strategic planning process. That is much more collaborative. That is kind of what Master Plan did in trying to compile this. So for me, what I see Master Plan is that long-range strategy. Now we actually have to do the financials to support that. So I feel like that, much to Jesse's point, that's already been laid out in a plan. Maybe it's the way that we look at the plan, and that maybe in a document that's linear is difficult visually versus, you know, putting it out in a different perspective. So we look at those clear buckets by department and we have that conversation and work at that from a strategic level. Because I just think we're kind of tactically, just throwing a lot of noodles at a wall right now that might not help. And so, but I do think if we pull ourselves back from the bigger picture, and to Jesse's point, so I think I guess my perspective would be to look at the master plan, kind of suggest what we did before, is come back and discuss it. I think Ms. Gillespie, with your recommendations of going to the different, you know, let's have each, chime in with open space and conservation, because everyone had to deem their short-term, mid-term, long-term. You must have a budget in mind. What is it going to take to eradicate some invasive species? What does that look like? Have we, I don't even engage in our budget planning process as a town. It seems very limited and very, 2-year focused. If we thought about that in a much bigger scale, we can't change that this year, but can we start maybe thinking about it that way and have the committees think about that short-term, long-term, and maybe think about it in that 1, 3, 5 year if 7 years is too late. So that's kind of would be my suggestion back to the select board and Sam to your process. But I think it's been laid out in the master plan. I think we just need to look at it a little bit differently. I applaud your approach to try and refine it so we can get to something, but I don't think you should make it so granular that it's a 1-year event, because some of these things will need funding over 3 to 5 years.
Mr. Litt.
Tim Litt, Woodland Road. As I listen to this, I've spent a certain amount of my life in corporate America and long-range plans and trying to figure out, what on earth we're going to do as well. I mean, it seems like there's an intermediate step that's missing here. And that, the master plan went out and said, here are things that we think should be done. And there was a sponsor for each one of them and sort of a description of what a nice end state would be. If I were trying to sell this to a board of directors or an investment committee or whatever, the next thing I would do is go down each one of them and say, what would it take to accomplish that goal in terms of time, people, and money? Then you can have the conversation of saying, okay, this is the size of the problem. Now, what can we afford to do and work the next step? But as far as I can tell, the master plan stopped with here are the desirable end states and why we think they're important. I thought it would be the job of the implementation committee to go back to the people who would have to implement each of those things and say, okay, what would it take to achieve this goal? Because that's what you have to go to advisory and selectmen and the rest of the budget process with. It's not going to happen because you think it's important. It won't happen if you don't think it's important. It's just, it's not sufficient to say it's important. You have to take the next step and say, because it's, whether it's important or not, this is what it would take to get there. Now, given, the importance, how do you match that up with available resources? Because, even in the corporate world, we end up, hitting, financial limits or resource limits, and we have to then sort things out. But we can't do it unless we know what we think it's going to take. And then, people like me argue with other people about, well, I think there's technical risk here. I think there's, legislative risk there. How much, what does that resource pool really look like as opposed to what do you wish it looked like? And then you go to the next step. And I think somehow that intermediate step is being skipped in this, and that is guaranteed to result in frustration.
Yes, ma'am.
So, sort of in line with what Mr. Litt just said, I would have looked at the master plan, and, my takeaway is that this is the master plan. We didn't call it the master, I have a dream or a wish list. A plan is a plan, and when they developed it, they thought it was doable. And not everything on there costs money. So to say, oh, we're going to put money to this area without knowing what actually needs to be done. So with budgets, because I know we run into budget issues, right? But we were told, maybe there'd be someone to do some grant writing. I can't do grant writing and get the work done. If we, somebody to go out and look for the grants. I mean, this has been talked about over and over again, but it always seems that the open space issues never get looked at when someone's going out to look for grant money, to see, what's needed. And we're not staffed, so we can't be looking for grants, writing grants, doing the work, and we'd get a lot of work done pro bono, right? So I find, and it doesn't just happen. There's a lot of time developed, a lot of time invested in finding someone pro bono who's going to come out and do a workshop, and then having to plan all that. Other departments, when they're planning a workshop, they have someone who's making the calls, setting up the room, getting the materials. We're doing all that ourselves. So talk to the commissions and committees and say, how could you be helped? And is it a funding thing, or is it some resources, or is it a grant? Not everything costs money, but there is support that's available. And to just take a list and say, well, we're going to fund this and not that, just seems short-sighted to me. And it's leaving out some really major components, no matter which ones you pick. If you pick open space, you're leaving something else out. I'm not saying it's just us, all the boards and committees. So I am disappointed to hear and to find out that people think that this master plan is not doable, that we're not supposed to be looking at it all, because, like I said before, I'd like to know which things are being taken off my plate. So, thank you.
Nothing. So does the planning board want to have this discussion? Or should we discuss this with the implementation committee, or how should we move forward?
So I think that based on this discussion tonight, unfortunately, we probably would be best served to set some time to devote to examining the master plan and picking priorities, and hoping that, I'm very cynical about this, as you can tell, but this is what we're working with, and we're going to do the best we can. So I would support us setting up time to engage in this process.
Ms. Houlihan.
Yeah, I guess my question would be, Deb, since you are on the implementation committee, I think it would be useful for us to actually, I think the Open Space Commission has a very good point, and so the question that I have is, it's kind of goes back to Mr. Litt's comment. Like, if each commission has gone through and said, okay, this is going to take time, talent, or treasure, that's really what needs to be surfaced up from each group to be able to look across everything, to be as a town, to be able to say, okay, we have resource. We can do that. We're not going to fund, but we're going to provide this resource for these two departments. But we don't have that information. So I think as being the owners of this document, it's really important for us to have that information to be able to help prioritize or at least put our contributions forward. Is there a way for the implementation for you to email the implementation people, to just email the people that are on their, who they touch base with quarterly, to see if they've compiled some sort of document that helps to say, in order to accomplish our short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals, we expect that we'll need, these things?
So we have on our committee, Kat McKee and Judith Watson created kind of like an intake form, and I think the form was appended to the first report that we gave you in the springtime, so you could see it. It may have been modified once since then, and that was the modification. And so just remember, we're in the we're in the middle of the fourth quarter, and we just started this year. So if you are reaching out to boards and committees, we're reaching out to every other quarter. I was wrong, it's not every quarter. Some of them are every other quarter. Then you're just really finding out, it's this, right, the touch points really are just kind of coming together. We've been, I'd say, a little hesitant to change the form to say, what do you need to reach this goal? Because it's always money, and so that's not really helpful. But as we speak to our connections, that is something that we're starting to gather in terms of information on the implementation committee. And that's coming in the way of these intake forms that are going into the report that's given to the planning board. So when I came to the planning board first time, I don't know if it was April, there was a question about what else would you want to see? Is this what you want to see? And it was the first report. So I don't know, this is what we gave you. But that could be maybe something that you'd like to see. And I'd have to go back and take a look at the report, because I don't know, how we're giving it to you, if there's room for that kind level of information. But we're just starting to collect that kind of information, because it's going to naturally come up, right? Say, a lot of the committees are saying, well, I really want to reach this goal, but I can't do it because of this reason. And so I think that's also information for us and for the select board, because it could be that we can help them. But we're just starting to gather that information. And probably, because there's a lot of boards and committees, some members are in different places with theirs, but I would say into this process, this is about the time where any individual committee or department realizes, it's, getting late, and, how did it get to be 2023? And I don't think, I'm going to make it. So we're starting to see that.
Can I just jump in quickly? That this implementation thing gives me heartburn right now. I'm a little nauseous, because I'm going to tell you from the get-go, if you want me to write reports, I'm not doing the work.
No. The implementation committee is compiling a report on
Based on what? Information we have to feed them, that I don't have time to do that. Nobody's been talking to me since the first quarter, so for me to take time away from what I'm doing, to tell you what I'm doing, who's going to write it up? We need some supports. We need a secretary. We don't have, it's challenging, and I understand the implementation committee. Many of those members, I assume almost all of them, are on other committees. They're not going to be sitting down writing up reports, are they?
Well, we are taking the information and inputting it into like a spreadsheet that's been made for us, and then that gets.
So it's not a spreadsheet I have to fill out?
No.
I misunderstood, sorry.
No.
Because even,
But
that's the type of support staff we could use.
So this is kind of the point of the strategic thinking. Like, you're so busy doing the tactical, for you to pull back and give the big picture, I think it's helpful for you to pull back to give the big picture to help understand. So I can hear you say, I need a resource. That I'm never going to be able to do that. I'm on the planning board. But for you to help us convey that's a need, I don't know how else we're supposed to get that. Are we supposed to get that by attending all your meetings?
Get what?
Information to help you, what helps you implement your plan.
No one's asked us what we needed to implement. We're just doing. So this is the first I've ever heard of, we have a list of what we do, and we're just doing our best to get it done. And now I'm hearing there's a discussion on who's going to get resources to do their work, but no one's asked us what we need, and we didn't. I know it's a chicken or egg thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's good information and I'll bring it back to the master
Yeah,
plan
I think it's
implementation.
more on like the
I think we have purposely
input.
avoided asking the question, because if you say, oh, do you need money to accomplish this? That. I know, not a leading question, but that is information that is probably coming in from
Well,
the liaison.
it's not even, do we need money? It's like, how are you going to, how are you going to make this happen? We're just doing the best we can to get things done as fast as we can. And to hear that maybe there'll be resources provided to groups and nobody's asking us what we need is kind of, chilling. And then to think that we need to write a report to get something, like, if there's a grant available, like, that would be nice. Is there a grant writer out there? Is there anyone looking for grants to help implement the master plan? I don't think so. So it's not just the budget, is what I'm saying. There's other ways of getting things done.
I think that is also something that Mr. Stivers has brought up that it could be highlighted, because I think he mentioned at our master plan implementation that they do consult with somebody that suggests to the town what kinds of grants are available for what the needs are. And so if, the more conversation I think that we have between the two boards, we can highlight some of that information. Maybe there's an opportunity, but we would only know by giving that to the select board.
Right.
Yeah.
And some of my anxiety right now is where I was standing this afternoon and trying to get these things done as fast as I can. And that's just one area that we've got a lot of work to do. And that's not spending money, just lots and lots of time. What's that, time, treasure, and talent? And my commission has a lot of that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Not money, though.
No treasure. Time and talent.
Okay, so where are we? Do we want to bring that up at a future meeting then? Put it
discussion,
as a discussion?
next meeting?
Yeah.
Mimi, if I may?
Oh, yes, Lisa.
I think this is a much bigger discussion than just planning board and select board at this point. I think that's pretty clear from tonight. I think, as Freddie said, that there's a lot of groups, I'm sure, that are working towards the goals without any funding being in place. It might be helpful to know where they're at as we go to set goals and what it is that they specifically need. I don't know, us setting priorities versus not knowing, what's going on with other groups is actually beneficial at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. So the Master Plan Implementation Committee has started gathering some information.
Yes.
Can that be shared with the planning board?
Well, we do owe you a report. I think we decided to do it twice a year.
Yeah.
And we'll be, preparing a report for you. Are you asking for which committees or boards or departments are looking for funding in particular, or priorities, or what actually are you looking for?
Well, just the feedback that you've gotten so far, and what boards and committees are working on and what their priorities are.
Yes, so we have forms that we use to talk to each of the committees, and what happens is the information from the forms is extracted and put into an Excel spreadsheet, but I think each of those forms are available. I think we're
Okay.
keeping them all.
Okay,
Yeah.
that may be
So let me think
helpful.
about the best way.
That may be
look at
helpful
that.
to inform our next.
Yeah, and I'll talk to the master plan implementation too, because as I mentioned, I think that this is the question that was just recently added, and not as a leading question, but what will it take for you to achieve this goal? And this is, so we don't have a lot of experience with that coming back yet, but we can certainly focus on that for the next round.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your work on this.
Thank you.
This brings us to planners report.
All right, no hands raised currently in the meeting room.
Oh, and thank you, Sam.
I pulled them off the list. Okay. All right, planners report very quickly. What we have an update on is we received, for 120 Turnpike, the 40B, the mass housing eligibility, project eligibility letter today, and I read it through very quickly, and it's my understanding that they're approving their funding, or whatever they approve. I think it's the funding, yes. Secondly is, Mimi and I have been working on a letter to the select board regarding the scenic road trees and stone wall mitigation concerns that were expressed at the last meeting. So we're just finalizing that, and we'll submit it probably tomorrow morning if you're all set with it, once we make it a little bit stronger. The next thing is, Mimi already discussed the informational meeting we had with town council and ZBA chair on generally speaking 40B information, and the process and all that, and I believe the ZBA is very appreciative of the planning board's working with them and trying to help everything stay on track. And that brings us to meeting minutes. And we have 4 sets.
Okay, I'll make a motion, the planning board approve the minutes as written from the September 18th, 2023 meeting.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. I have discussion. On line 44, Hokinson is Hokinson.
Yes.
And on line 119, applicant stated the 2 maples were on the street tree list, I think, not that they were native.
Tell me the one line again.
119,
119?
on the maple trees, it says the maple trees are native or something like that.
Yeah, it says the applicant agreed that the 2 maple trees were native.
I think the applicant stated they were on the street tree list.
On street tree list.
Yeah. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, as amended. Latrell, yes?
Stein, yes?
Houlihan, yes?
Demiria, yes?
Brashio, yes.
All right.
I'd like to make a motion, the planning board approve the minutes from the September 19th, 2023 meeting.
Second?
I have discussion. On line 35, Phea is Phaea.
Good catch.
Thea?
Yeah.
P-A-E-A.
Phaea.
Got it. Thank you.
Any more discussion?
As I was absent, I will be abstaining.
Seeing none, all in favor, Latrell, yes?
Houlihan, yes?
Demiria, yes?
Brashio, yes.
I'd like to make a motion that the planning board approve the minutes from the September 21st, 2023 meeting.
Second?
For discussion. Line 47, it's a minimum of 15 units per acre, not maximum.
Wait, which?
September 21st
September
minutes?
Oh,
Oh, what are we at?
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're at-
Oh,
yeah.
21.
I have no discussion on the 21st.
As I was absent, I will be abstaining.
Any discussion on the 21st? Seeing none, all in favor, Latrell, yes?
Houlihan, yes.
Demiria, yes?
Brashio, yes.
I'd like to make a motion, the planning board approve the meeting minutes from the September 27th, 2023 meeting.
Second.
Sorry, that one line,
That's okay.
47, minimum,
47.
minimum 15 units an acre, not maximum.
Okay.
Good catch.
Any other discussion?
As I was absent, I will be abstaining.
As I was absent, I will abstain.
Seeing none, all in favor, Latrell, yes?
Demiria, yes?
Brashio, yes.
Anything else?
Thank you. Let me
Can I
look.
entertain a motion to adjourn?
Just before, real quick, I have a couple of plans we need to sign, just 4 sheets. And that's it, very quick. They're 14 Main Street and 28 Turnpike.
All right.
Adjourn? Is that what you want?
Second.
Motion, yeah, moved. A second before I can make it.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, Latrell, yes?
Stein, yes?
Houlihan, yes.
Demiria, yes?
Brashio, yes.
Feel better, Lisa?
I thought for sure.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Well, if I could speak